Welcome, everyone. This is your friend, the DN What If, here with another exciting fanfiction. Today, we're diving into the story of what if Deku had a resurrection quirk and returned from the dead? If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fanfiction content just like this. Now, let's get started with the fanfic. It was supposed to be a normal day. Katsuki woke up this morning, along with the rest of his class, expecting a routine training exercise. The plan was to head off-site to a special facility where they would be running through disaster simulations and learning from rescue heroes on the best ways to assist. It seemed a little basic for second-year UA students, but Katsuki wasn't going to question it. He's been itching for a good fight for a while now. School training gets boring sometimes, and he can only take so much of it before he's dying to blow something up. He's already having a shitty couple of weeks. Glancing at the calendar seems inescapable, especially as it passes the 1-year anniversary of... Nope. He's not touching that. He can't. It can't have been a year already. It feels so fast. It feels like a lifetime has passed. The class was expecting a normal day of training, if a little more intense. They were not expecting a routine field trip to turn into a villain attack. Aizawa spots the intruders first, yelling at them to brace for a fight. Katsuki settles into a fighting stance immediately, his blood pumping and his mood substantially improving as he sees the attackers coming. Finally, some FANG action to distract him from the dull monotony. Kirishima and Kaminari appear on his other side, and he's so excited by the prospect of a good fight that he doesn't even bother to tell them to F off. He just rushes forward, aiming a well-placed right hook that catches a woman with claws for hands in the side of her head. She's down for the count a moment later, as Katsuki twists his hand so that the edge of his gauntlet smacks her a second time. It leaves Katsuki in the middle of the pack, and even though he's surrounded by villains, suddenly he doesn't care about much of anything beyond the adrenaline pumping through his veins. There's none of the tedium, none of the shitty moods he's been in lately, none of the tiny but subtle reminders of how much things have well and truly SCKD for the last year. There's only the sound of explosions ringing in his ears, and his classmates' and teachers' voices as they call out battle strategies. He can hear Glasses and Ponytail trying to coordinate their attack like the good, organized class reps they are, but he's nothing if not known for going off-script whenever Sheik gets crazy. Shitty hair backs him up, just like always, even though he rolls his eyes. "One of these days going off on your own is gonna bite you in the butt, man," he says. Katsuki feels his stomach clench, and instinctively he casts his hand back, setting off another explosion behind him to mask the feeling. It catches two of the attacking villains in the crossfire, but it doesn't quite manage to stifle the reminder of another day. Another voice saying the same thing, back before UA and hero training and the day his whole world turned upside down. Most of the villains are down within 5 minutes, and Ida zooms from one end of the room to the other to apprehend the unconscious and restrain them. It's a group fighting system the class has perfected by now. The scouts get the lay of the land, the offensive types jump into the fight, and the support and speed heroes help with cleanup. But right now Katsuki's just itching for more. He's been itching for more for weeks now, stuck in a hole he can't quite seem to crawl out of. He's stuck in this shitty mood, angry at the world and unable to quiet the storm in his gut no matter how many things he blows up or punches or kicks. It sees him the F off, and he turns around, looking for something, anything, to quench that rage. Most of the attackers are down for the count by now. It wasn't a terribly well-coordinated attack, Katsuki can't help but think, and most of these guys don't seem like they're terribly strong opponents. They look like garden-variety thugs picked up off the street, and part of Katsuki feels a little insulted by that. Bakugo pride and all that. But after a moment he PPS his head, his brow furrowing as he spots Round Face fighting a man that he swears he's seen somewhere before. He runs towards them, yelling at Uraraka to go help Ida round up the rest, and because the rest of the class has gotten good at following his lead, she nods, leaving Katsuki ample room to attack. But Katsuki hesitates, scrutinizing the man's face as the villain stares at him with a come-if-they-get-me-already look on his face. Where has Katsuki seen him before? He knows he has, and it could be important or it could be nothing, but he's learned enough about being a hero to know not to dismiss coincidences. He racks his brain, trying to think, trying to remember as he launches himself into the air, dodging a punch and then a kick aimed at his face. And then suddenly it clicks, awareness dawning like a bucket of ice water. The realization makes Katsuki tense all over as it does, and before he can process exactly what's happening inside his head, he's launching himself towards the man. He looks like nothing special. Katsuki doesn't even remember his name, only his face. He looks like any other low-level criminal, and he was probably hired to do this job by the guy who's actually calling the shots. But Katsuki hurtles towards him like he's the boss fight in a video game, because his heart is pounding for some reason and he can't figure out why. "Thought you were supposed to be dead, a-hole?" Katsuki yells, aiming an AP shot at the villain's head. Katsuki tries to hide his surprise as he keeps going, rushing the man before he has a chance to even blink. This guy's name showed up on a list of villains that were reported deceased a few months ago, so how? Katsuki doesn't get to finish that thought, as he lets out a small explosion from his right hand, course-correcting in midair to avoid the knife hurtling towards his stomach. Apparently this guy's old-fashioned, preferring to use ordinary weapons. Or he's just quirkless and thought going up against Yue's best was a good idea. Katsuki doesn't expect an answer, but his eyebrow shoots right up when he gets one anyway. Apparently this BSTRD is the vocal type. That's what I thought too. The man cackles, shaking his head as he smiles. I definitely should be. Oh man, I thought I was toast when we got tangled up with those League of Villains guys. Gunshot wound to the heart and everything. Katsuki blinks, as something long buried flickers to life in his gut. An old memory from a long-dead past, of the one thing he was trying to avoid by blowing things up. Shut the f***, he tells himself. Don't do that. Not now. If he goes down that particular hole in the middle of a fight, then the whole class will want an explanation he can't give them. He scowls, blasting towards the villain again. So what, you a DMN miracle worker or something? The man is unbothered, still laughing and seemingly lost in his own little world. Not me, he says, tossing another knife that Katsuki dodges easily. Boss brought me back to base and suddenly I was right as rain again. Turns out he had this kid locked up in the basement just for this kind of sheet. Brought me back good as new. Katsuki's whole body freezes in midair. He's only dimly aware of plummeting towards the ground, just barely getting his legs underneath him before he hits the pavement face first. He can hear yelling from the rest of the class, who have apparently finished dealing with the rest of the villains and showed up to help, wondering what happened. But he can't hear them over the ringing in his ears, and his whole body turns to ice as his mouth opens. His hands shake as every atom in his body seems to shatter apart. He takes a step back, before sprinting forward, ignoring everything in his path as his vision tunnels dangerously. It seems like only a second before he's got the villain's errand boy by the collar, one explosive palm hovering an inch from the man's head. Bakugo! Stop! Aizawa's cries fall on deaf ears as Katsuki lets out a threatening pop, trying desperately to hold back whatever is happening inside his chest. Look, Kaken. Isn't it amazing? This little guy was just gone, but I healed him up no problem. I brought him back. Say that again, Katsuki whispers, his face inches from the villain's and his voice shaky. The man looks equal parts nervous and amused, as he stares at Katsuki's deadly hand and broken eyes. Why the kid? Oh yeah, boss said he keeps him around in case the boys meet bad news on jobs. Little green runt is a blubbering mess, but he's useful, I'll give him that. There's pressure on Katsuki's arms, pulling him back, but he can't feel the touch. Voices in his ears get lost underneath the sudden burst of white noise. He has no control over his own body at this moment, not even when Aizawa's face appears in front of him, blocking his field of vision. He might be screaming, might be falling, might be collapsing into an endless void he wouldn't know. He can't process anything. There's images in his head, flashes of memories that flicker in and out of his thoughts. Two small boys bouncing a ball on the playground. The same boys, a little older, planning out their future hero agency. The first few months, when Katsuki couldn't process what was happening, his parents taking him to therapy, the police, the funeral, the grave. Katsuki's thoughts run together as Aizawa screams his name, A steady stream of sounds inside his head that eventually form words. Izuku 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 Deku 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 Izuku Deku Deku. Bakugo! Can you hear me? Deku's alive. Izuku's alive. He's alive. 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 How is he alive? His face is wet. There are voices all around him, hands all over him, but he doesn't react. Vaguely, he can feel his chest heaving. But all of it fades into the background as he crumples to the floor, his awareness fading to black a few moments later. For as long as Katsuki Bakugo can remember, Izuku Midoriya has been his friend. Their moms have known each other since their high school days, so of course Katsuki and Izuku met at a young age. Katsuki remembers the first day they saw each other. He was a small, feisty 4-year-old, suddenly face to face with this tiny, shy boy clutching a small All Might action figure. The same one that Katsuki had back home in his bedroom. Izuku gave him a tiny smile and a wave. Katsuki blinked, before stepping forward confidently and pointing at Izuku's All Might. "He's cool," he said, bluntly and without a filter. Izuku's smile got bigger and brighter, and things took off from there. They played together constantly. Their mothers were thrilled about it. Katsuki learned later that Mitsuki wasn't sure that the two of them would get along. Katsuki isn't sure how that's possible, considering that even back then, they were so similar in so many ways. Different in some, too, but not so different that it was overwhelming. Mainly, they both bonded over wanting to be heroes. They both loved All Might above all else, but really, they loved anything having to do with being a hero. They played pretend heroes all the time, and as they got older and started school, they would talk about being heroes together someday. They made so many plans back then. They were vague and abstract and made by 5-year-olds, of course, but they were plans nonetheless. It made Katsuki happy. He was going to be the best, the number one, but Izuku was going to be his number two. That was an indisputable fact. Then they got their quirks. Katsuki still remembers the way Izuku's eyes shined when he saw the tiny explosions emanating from Katsuki's hands, the way he jumped up and down excitedly. "Kaken! That's so amazing! You're gonna be so strong." Dimon right he was. He was going to be the strongest. Izuku's quirk came later, much later. So much later that for weeks prior, Katsuki cried, thinking their dream was dead and he was going to have to be number one alone. But then one day in the park, Izuku came running up to him, holding a tiny animal in his hands. "Kaken, Kaken, Kaken." He was crying but smiling at the same time. "Look." Katsuki glanced down at the dead bird in his hands. "Huh." Izuku shook his head. "No, look. There were these 2 birds over by the trees. They fell out of their nest, and they were all bloody and bent, but I held one of them and—" Izuku was talking so fast that it was difficult to keep up. "Just watch, Kaken." Katsuki stared at the bird, dead one moment and alive and chirping the next, as Izuku's brow furrowed in concentration. His jaw dropped. After that, their plans changed. They were still going to be the best heroes. But now they had both sides of the coin. Katsuki would be the fighter, the strong one. Izuku would be the one who saves everyone, the rescue hero that supports Katsuki in his kick-ass fights. Of course, Izuku would know how to fight too. He was stubborn like Katsuki, and just as ambitious. Both of them were more excited than ever. And as they got older, as they both started learning even more about their powers and dreams, Katsuki treasured their friendship more than ever. Izuku became Deku when Katsuki was learning to read. He saw the kanji of Izuku's name, mistook the lettering, and it stuck. Izuku never seemed to mind. He always smiled a little brighter when Katsuki called him that, like Deku was their own little secret code word that no one else knew about. Some of their friends were confused. "Doesn't Deku mean useless?" they asked. But Katsuki shook his head. Deku wasn't useless. He was Deku, and he was Katsuki's best friend, and Katsuki was the strongest, so that meant Deku was the strongest too. Izuku never stopped calling Katsuki Kaken either. Katsuki grumbled about it, especially as elementary school turned into middle school and they got older. He knew that Deku would stop if Katsuki seriously asked. But underneath the groaning and complaining, Katsuki never really seemed to mind. Izuku was Deku, and Katsuki was Kaken, and somehow, that just seemed right. They both applied to UA. They wanted to be the best heroes, so of course they had to go to the best hero school. It was only natural. Izuku worried about whether he would be able to get into the hero course, with a quirk like his, but Katsuki smacked him upside the head whenever he caught Izuku spiraling. His quirk was perfect for a rescue hero. UA would have to be idiots not to see that. Katsuki and Deku spent months preparing for the entrance exam. They went to the gym nearly every day, focusing on training their bodies and getting stronger. When they weren't working out or learning how to fight, they were studying for the written test. They spent hours sitting on Katsuki or Izuku's bed, sifting through any and all material that might be on the test. On the day of the exam, they got there 2 hours early, and Deku was practically vibrating with the nerves. Katsuki was too, even as he tried to hide it. Fagged it out before the test. Izuku mumbled that Kaken is the strongest. There's no way you're going to fail. Katsuki whispered back, "Stupid nerd, you worked your butt off for this. Just 'cause you don't have a fighting quirk doesn't mean you're not gonna get in. Shut the F up and ace this." They both took the exam with matching ferocious smiles on their faces. They got in, of course. They were one step closer to their lifelong dream, their goals of becoming the #1 heroes. It made Katsuki so happy at the time, especially when he reached for Izuku's hand like he had been thinking about doing for ages and Deku didn't pull away. A few days later, Izuku asked him to go to their favorite smoothie place to celebrate. Katsuki remembers the nerves lighting his whole body on fire, because even though they had done that a million times before, this definitely felt like more than just two friends hanging out from the way Deku stumbled over the words and flushed bright red. It felt like something new. And Katsuki said yes, his own face heating up, because it had always been the two of them, for as long as he could remember. There was only one other person who had ever made him feel like this, made him want something other than being the strongest. They were still just kids. Neither one of them knew much about anything when it came to this kind of stuff. But Katsuki wanted to learn. With Deku. So he spent hours thinking about it. He read stupid middle school romance manga because he thought that would help. It didn't. He went so far as to ask his dad for advice, leading to a very embarrassing conversation that he does not ever want to repeat. When he got to the smoothie shop, he felt like he was ready for whatever the hell was going to come next. He felt excited for whatever was next. But Deku never showed up. He didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't anything. He just vanished. Katsuki called Inko first. Then his mom, then his dad, then their friends in school and anyone who might know where Izuku was. He knew Deku. Deku wouldn't ditch him like this. Something had to be wrong. It was a little while before he realized exactly how wrong it all was. Things blur together after that. Katsuki remembers talking to the police. He remembers telling the same story over and over again, and listening to his mom and Auntie Inko do the same. He remembers a lot of crying, a lot of yelling, and a lot of things he still can't bring himself to face. He remembers staring at the sky and begging Deku to come back. He remembers shouting at police officers and heroes, trying to convince them to let him help. He knew Izuku best. Of course they were going to need his help. He was the best. The strongest. He got into UA. Only the best hero was going to find him. Only Katsuki was going to find him. But they told him no, every time. Katsuki remembers the day they finally stopped looking for Izuku, after they found enough of his blood in a dark alley to conclude that the worst had happened. It comes back to him in bits and pieces, but Katsuki remembers the way his entire being seemed to crack, the way the fire that powered his explosions had suddenly gone out like a gust of wind ripped through his insides. Someone told him afterwards that he stared blankly at nothing for hours after he got the news, not saying a DMN thing. Not eating either. He remembers feeling like he was falling, like someone had picked him up and dropped him out of the sky. Face first into a nightmare. Katsuki barely remembers the funeral. It's all static inside his head, even now. He knows it happened, but he can't recall much of the details. He didn't speak a single word the whole day. He still doesn't even know if he cried. He didn't hear whatever FING platitudes that the adults kept saying to him. He didn't hear his parents talking to him, practically begging him to just say a single word. His body, his brain, his heart just shut down. He probably should have paid attention to the eulogy. Judging from the amount of crying that went on around him, It was most likely a good one. But none of it mattered. None of the "it's a celebration of his life, focus on the good things" bullshit could snap him out of the void inside his head for long enough to drift back to reality. Deku was gone, and no amount of pretty words or hugs or crying fits at 3 a.m. was going to bring him back or chase away the static in his brain. His parents dragged him to therapy. Sometimes he thought it helped. Sometimes he thought it was making everything worse. But he went to UA, and somehow he kept going and got through his first year despite feeling like everything around him had suddenly lost its shine. Maybe it's because he knew it was what Deku would have wanted, but he couldn't bring himself to stop chasing number one. Sometimes it made him feel so selfish. Sometimes it was the only thing that distracted him from setting off explosion after explosion until his whole body crumbled to ash. Katsuki was heartbroken. He was devastated, depressed, disheveled, all that crap at first. And then he was just angry. There are 5 stages of grief. Isn't that what they always say? If there are, then Katsuki has never known the last 3. He's been stuck in stage 2 for as long as he can remember, channeling all that pain into white-hot rage that never seems to ebb. He was always a little rough around the edges, of course, but suddenly he was overwhelmingly angry, yelling and screaming and snapping at anyone who dared to try and approach him. He still isn't quite sure when the shift from crying to yelling happened, but his shitty moods just kept boiling over as high school started. And he only got angrier as first year went on, as he stubbornly resisted anyone's attempts to get close to him and threw himself headlong into fights without much care for holding back. He walked through the hallways, thinking about nothing except all the things that Deku would have said, how excited he would have been. All the tiny reminders that Deku wasn't here anymore made his blood boil, set him off so badly that most days, he didn't care who he was snapping at. He couldn't feel anything except his anger, at himself for not being strong enough to stop this and at everyone else for being too dim and pleasant when he felt like the world had suddenly dropped out from underneath his feet. Sure, he respected his classmates, but that didn't mean he had to like them, or that he had to pretend to be happy when he felt anything but. No matter how many villains he took down, how many fights he won, how much he got ahead of the rest, or how many therapists he saw, nothing seemed to water down that fury. He never let it interfere with his hero work or grades, but more often than not, most of the class walked on eggshells around him. Somehow, Katsuki made friends, even though he didn't want to. Making friends felt wrong, like he was making Deku upset, somehow. It felt like forgetting him. Some days, he wondered why he was even still chasing his dream when the person he wanted to share it with was gone, and that made him madder. That anger kept him going, kept fueling his fire until he suddenly found himself in the middle of his second year of high school, and at the end of his first year since Deku died. Maybe it's easier to be angry than to be in pain. At least when he's angry, he can hear Izuku's voice inside his head telling him to calm down. When he's angry, he doesn't have to miss him as much. He doesn't have to think about the dark cloud hanging over his head. Some days, he thinks he might be getting better, and those days hurt worst of all. Those days make him feel like he's moving on, like Deku's memory is fading away entirely. On those days, the anger keeps him from drowning in despair. Of course we got in. I don't know, Kaken, what if? Shut up. They'd be idiots not to accept us. He's trying to reassure Izuku to stop his own heart from pounding, but he doesn't think it's working. But I definitely screwed up on the last part of the written test, and I did my best on the practical, but it wasn't really a scenario where I could use my quirk, and even my combat skills were lackluster compared to some of the other applicants. That kid with the engines. Katsuki smacks Deku upside the head. Stop it, idiot. We got in. He stares down at the envelopes in their hands. His own eyes are as wide as Izuku's, and maybe that undercuts what he was saying, but he's not about to let Deku spiral out of control before they've even opened the letters. Katsuki takes a deep breath. Then 2. On 3. Deku nods, chewing on his bottom lip. His hair is so messy, because he's been doing nothing but pulling at it for the last 10 minutes. Yeah, he says. On 3. 1. 2. 3. Katsuki tears open the envelope in a hurry, opening the letter and stubbornly refusing to acknowledge how badly his hands are shaking. But then, Katsuki stares at the words written on that page and feels the relief coursing through his veins. He did it. If did it. He's one step closer to becoming the best hero. Not that he ever really had doubts, but he couldn't help but worry. When he looks up with a giant smirk on his face, he sees Izuku staring at the letter with wide, watery eyes. His mouth is hanging open, his hands shaking where he grips the page. Oh shit. Deku. Izuku's eyes snap to Katsuki's, and only then does he realize that what he initially took for sorrow was actually awe. Katsuki feels something warm and powerful sucker punch him right in the pit of his stomach. I got in, Deku says, the tears beginning to fall. I really got in. Katsuki smiles brightly. Me too, nerd. Deku beams, surging forward to wrap his arms around Katsuki's waist. He's laughing, squeezing Katsuki so tightly that he's surprised he can still breathe, but all Katsuki can do is laugh along with him. They made it. They really made it. This is really happening, Izuku whispers as he pulls back, staring at Katsuki with that giant dopey smile on his face. We're going to UA. We're gonna be heroes. Katsuki grins back at him. Demon right we are, nerd. We're gonna be the best DMN hero duo in Japan. Izuku beams even brighter, if that's possible, and Katsuki feels his heart throbbing with some emotion he can't quite place. It's overwhelming, suddenly, the swell of something that he feels for this idiot at this moment. He can't quite decipher what it means, only that he's happy. Really happy. Almost deliriously happy, especially when he catches something flickering in Deku's eyes that might mirror whatever Katsuki is feeling in the pit of his stomach. He's been staring at Deku like this more and more, he realizes. Lingering looks, thoughts that make his face turn red, and fluttering inside his chest at the most inconvenient of times. He knows, vaguely, what it all means, and he knows that Deku might not actually feel the same, but suddenly, he doesn't care. He doesn't care that it might ruin everything, doesn't bother to consider the consequences of what he's about to say. He doesn't think about anything except Izuku's stupid, pretty freckles as he reaches for his hand. Katsuki's stomach flips when Izuku doesn't pull away. He opens his mouth to say something, and he has no idea what's about to come out, but he needs to do something to voice these thoughts inside his head. He takes a deep breath, looking up to meet Izuku's eyes. Hey! Izuku! Katsuki gasps as his eyes fly open. But instead of the face he expects to see, the face that was just hovering at the edge of his awareness as he relived that memory, he turns his head to see Aizawa-sensei sitting beside the bed he's apparently been sleeping in. Kirishima and Kaminari are standing slightly behind him, looking worried. Katsuki blinks, his mouth turning downwards into a scowl and his brow furrowing. What the F dash, he mutters, his heart pounding and his chest aching. His brain is still a little hazy. He's not quite sure what he's doing here, or where here even is, exactly, but he can feel his heart pounding and his head aching. What the f happened? For a moment Katsuki has no idea where he is, but as soon as he feels something soft underneath him and sheets covering his chest, it all comes rushing back. He must have passed out. But what? How did he get here? Where is he? He needs to go. There's something important he needs to do, something that can't wait. He can't remember what, exactly, but something. He sits up so quickly that he gets vertigo, oblivious to the cries of Aizawa and Kirishima and Kaminari telling him to take it slow. He can't slow down. Something is nagging at the edge of his awareness, the haze of sleep eclipsing some important truth that seems to be escaping him at the moment. Bakugo, are you okay? You just dropped out of the sky all of a sudden and then you passed out. Kaminari looks worried, and Katsuki's brow furrows as he tries to blink the sleep from his eyes. Did I do that? Aizawa looks at him for a moment, watching him with that piercing stare. It's a little unnerving, especially as Katsuki struggles to kick his brain back into gear for long enough to remember what got him in the infirmary in the first place. He wouldn't have actually lost a fight. Something else must have happened. Did he get hit by a quirk or something? Bakugo, Aizawa says, bringing his focus back to the present. You blacked out. Can you tell us what happened? Katsuki frowns, trying to remember. He was fighting, flying, exploding a villain. He had this kid locked in the basement. Brought me back. Little green runt is a blubbering mess. Izuku. Deku is alive. It wasn't a dream. Katsuki feels the whole world tilt again, his breathing picking up as everything comes flooding back. His whole body shakes, and he can't help but glance down at his lap as his eyes burn. He knows Kirishima and Kaminari are watching him with worried eyes, but Katsuki can only focus on trying to get air into his lungs as his hands clench and unclench into fists. Bakugo! Aizawa's voice cuts through the haze as he squeezes his shoulder. It's all right. You're safe. He almost laughs because really he has no idea what his brain is doing right now. His emotions are in free fall, spiraling out of control faster than he can stop them. He should be embarrassed. He should be trying to save face, to keep whatever's left of his pride in front of his teacher and his classmates. Heroes don't pass out in the middle of a villain fight like that. But he can't bring himself to worry about any of that, because all he can think about, all he can focus on at this moment is Deku, Katsuki whispers, his voice cracking on the word. Aizawa frowns. You kept mumbling that word while you were out. Over and over. Explain, Bakugo. His voice is soft, not unkind, but Katsuki doesn't care, instead leaping from the bed. Ignoring the dizziness and racing for the exit before anyone can stop him. He can't stay here, not when Izuku is out there alone, not when he's somehow still FNG alive after all this time. Let me go, Katsuki cries, struggling when Aizawa's capture weapon wraps around his waist. He made it halfway to the door, but now he's pinned. I need to find Deku, make the villain talk, make him tell me where he is. Man, just take a breath, Kirishima says, looking worried. What's wrong? Bakugo, Aizawa says in a stern voice. Tell us what's going on. Katsuki yells, the anger flowing through him suddenly. None of this shit FNG matters. He knows what he heard, and he needs to get to that FNG asswipe villain before they put him in some hole in the ground where Katsuki will never find him again. He needs to talk to him before he gets away. Aizawa stands up, moving to stand in front of Katsuki and cinching the capture weapon tighter around his waist. He flashes his erasure when Katsuki's hands crackle dangerously, and Katsuki finds it hard to breathe again as he starts to feel trapped from all sides. He still doesn't know what his emotions are doing. He wants to cry and scream and punch something and run away all at the same time, and his heart is pounding so loudly that it's throbbing in his ears. He feels like he's spinning out of control, but the villain's words are playing on a loop inside his head, and even though he knows Aizawa needs to know what's going on, he can't bring himself to calm down. Aizawa just stares at him for a moment, and Katsuki doesn't know what he sees on his face, but he turns towards Kirishima and Kaminari. Go back to the dorms, he tells them quietly. Let the class know that everything is fine, and get yourselves cleaned up. Kirishima frowns, still staring at Katsuki with wide eyes. But, Sensei, go. Bakugo will be right behind you. They look like they want to say something else, to protest, but one more look at Aizawa sends them packing. Katsuki sees Sparkplug flash him one more look, and he knows he's going to have some explaining to do later, but he can't bring himself to worry about that right now. The door shuts behind them a moment later, leaving Katsuki and Aizawa alone. Aizawa stares down at him with a pensive look, his tired eyes meeting Katsuki's frantic ones, and after a long, long pause he sighs. If I let you go, are you going to sprint for the door again? Aizawa's voice is unexpectedly soft, and for some inexplicable effing reason it acts as a balm to Katsuki's frantic, frazzled, heartbroken brain, and suddenly all the fight goes out of Katsuki's body in one breath, his arms hanging limp and his back arching forwards with a low, pitiful whine. The tears shining his eyes grow even closer to falling, and suddenly every inch of him aches like he's carrying a 10-ton weight on his back. Apparently he's lost all ability to regulate his fed-up emotions. He hasn't been this off balance since the day that Deku disappeared. He's so tired and scared, and a million other things. But most of all he's hopeful for the first time in a year, and it's absolutely destroying him. He barely feels Aizawa's hands on his shoulders, walking him slowly back towards the infirmary bed and gently pushing him onto it. Katsuki's breathing is ragged again, his arms coming up across his chest as his nails dig into his biceps. Deku, he says again, in that same broken voice. Apparently that's the extent of what his mind can process right now. Aizawa seems to sense that he needs a minute or two, and he simply sits back down in the chair he was occupying before. He doesn't say anything for a long time, simply observing as Katsuki struggles to get his breathing and his body under control. Katsuki digs his nails further into his biceps, as if that's the thing that will stop him from crumbling to the floor. All the pain and misery that he's kept locked away for this entire goddamn year is flooding his brain, but it's mixing with happier thoughts, questions that he can't answer yet, and possibilities that he finds himself thinking about before he can convince himself to stop. How the f is he alive? How are we going to get him back? What the f is he going to be like after a year as a prisoner? Could we maybe? Finally, Aizawa leans forward, resting his forearms on his knees and snapping Katsuki out of his racing thoughts. Contrary to popular belief, I know you don't go off the rails like that unless it's for something really important to you. Katsuki wants to laugh and cry at the same time. They have a really, really good teacher. I was close enough to hear what the villain said. Aizawa continues. But I need you to tell me why it made you react like this. Katsuki's bottom lip trembles. He wants to talk about it, and he really doesn't at the same time, but he knows he won't be able to help Deku if he doesn't say something. Almost unconsciously, his eyes flit down towards his wrist, towards a small bracelet that he hasn't taken off at any point in the past year, even when he was broken and bleeding. It's like a constant tether back to the past, and Katsuki traces it with one finger as he swallows down the lump in his throat. Finally, Katsuki sighs. Izuku Midoriya, he breathes, the name tasting like bitter cyanide and sweet ambrosia at the same time. Aizawa frowns. Your parents spoke with the faculty before you enrolled here, he says, seeming to choose his words carefully. He was supposed to enroll with you. I remember his file. He died just before you were supposed to start UA. And that was hard for you to deal with. Katsuki knows what he must be thinking, and he shakes his head, his panicked anger rising again. This isn't about my shitty feelings, he says, venom lacing the words. But when he looks up, his eyes are begging, pleading with Aizawa to understand. I'm not crazy, or breaking down, or whatever. Heard what that BSTRD said. He was supposed to die, but they had a kid locked up who saved him. A green kid. Brought him back from a gunshot wound to the heart. Izuku's Quirk, he. Aizawa's brow furrows for a moment, before it clicks, and he leans back. You think it's him. You think he's alive, and they're keeping him somewhere so they can use his power. Katsuki feels his eyes burning as the tears threaten to fall. He doesn't particularly want to cry in front of his teacher, but he's overwhelmed and overstimulated, and he's hoping like he hasn't dared to hope in ages. Deku, he has green hair. And his quirk. It's exactly like what the villain described. His head droops, and he looks away from Aizawa's face as the emotions threaten to overwhelm him again. He has to make Aizawa understand. Izuku is alive. He has to be alive. It's too perfect to be a coincidence. Aizawa sighs. It could be anything, he says, not unkindly. It might not be him. The villain could have lied, or exaggerated the truth just to rile you up. Katsuki knows that he's right. Hell, if he were more rational right now he would probably agree. But it makes a frustrated, sad groan fall from his lips, because he's so fragile at this moment that he can't control himself. He said the kid was a blubbering mess. Katsuki whispers. Deku cried all the time. He was sensitive like that. Suddenly, it's all he can think about, as images of Deku's crying face all throughout childhood flit through his mind. Except he's not crying because he saw a cute cat, or he couldn't get that piece of limited edition All Might merch he wanted, or he was worried about the UA exam, this time. He's crying because he's scared, because he's trapped somewhere alone and terrified and sad and probably in pain, and he's been there for this entire year and a half while Katsuki just left him there. He's crying because someone's been hurting him this whole damn time, because they wanted his power for their own, and Katsuki doesn't know what's happening to his body right now, but his breaths start coming in tiny gasps again. Aizawa looks thoughtful. We don't know anything about this villain. It's likely that he was talking about someone else. He speaks with that same brusque tone he always does, and usually Katsuki doesn't mind when Aizawa is blunt and brash with his words, but right now it's killing him. Katsuki's hand reaches out of its own accord, latching on tightly to Aizawa's wrist. "Please," he gasps, his voice coming out small and his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Please." He doesn't know if he's ever said the word please to Aizawa before now, and part of him hates that he's been reduced to a begging, shaky mess in front of his teacher, but he's scared and sad and hopeful and desperate, and he has to find Deku. He swallows. If it's really him, if there's a chance that Deku is really alive, he breaks off with a choked-up noise, swiping at his eyes. With the back of his other hand. "I have to know. I have to do something. I couldn't. The first time." Those memories burn through him like wildfire suddenly, all that time spent yelling in vain, trying to get someone, anyone, to listen. All the heroes that just pat his head, ruffling his hair as they smiled at him. "Don't worry, kid," they said. "We're gonna bring him back and he's gonna be just fine." But they didn't, and now Deku might have been a villain's prisoner for a year and a half because of it. "Please, Sensei," Katsuki whispers again. "It has to be him. I know it's him. But if it's not, then, at least I'll know for sure." Aizawa is silent again, for a moment. He stares at Katsuki's hand where it's latched onto his wrist, before hesitantly reaching to pry his fingers away. Aizawa mulls over his words for a moment. Then he sighs, and in that tone Katsuki knows all too well by now, he says, "Sometimes when we lose someone, we start seeing echoes of them everywhere, even after they've been gone a long time. False hope can be paralyzing for heroes. For anyone." Katsuki knows what he's doing. He's doing the logical thing, the good teacher thing. He's trying to protect Katsuki from hurting even more. But even knowing that, Katsuki explodes. "This isn't FNG about me," he yells, his voice rising so suddenly that Aizawa draws back in surprise. "This isn't about my FING grieving process or seeing things that aren't there, or whatever FING else all you people have been telling me about for months. All these FNG people treat me like I'm made of glass and it makes me so mad. I've had people telling me this kind of crap and treating me like I'm about to lose my mind for a whole goddamn year. Don't you think I know this sheet by now? Of course I see echoes of him everywhere, and I hear his voice all the demon time, and I can't go 2 seconds without wondering what would have happened if he never disappeared, or if I had done something to help him, and..." Katsuki chokes on an ugly sob, wiping at the few stray tears that have started to fall. All the emotions that have been coiling inside him since that villain opened his mouth spill freely from him now, the rage mixing with pain until he can't tell where one ends and the other begins. "I miss him so bad I can barely stand up some days, but that's not what this is effing about, Sensei. I know what I FNG heard, and I know it could be nothing, but I can't just pretend I didn't hear it. You don't know what this is like. And I don't give a F if you don't believe me, but I'm not just going to sit here doing nothing if there's even the slightest FNG chance that Deku could be alive and trapped in some basement somewhere. We're heroes, right? We FING save people. I'll do anything." Aizawa sighs, scooting closer and leaning forward so that his face is close to Katsuki's. If he's bothered by Katsuki's rant, he doesn't say anything, but his mouth turns downward as he watches Katsuki spew his feelings in a violent crescendo. Aizawa simply waits patiently until Katsuki tires himself out and slumps backwards, his back hitting the wall. All his anger leaves him in one shaky breath, as he looks back at his teacher with sad, hopeful eyes. After a moment, Aizawa leans forward again. "Katsuki, listen to me." And something in the way he looks at him, something in his eyes that hits Katsuki like a punch to the stomach, tells him that maybe he does know what this is like. Painfully. Intimately. Katsuki shuts up. "I know what he meant to you, and I know you're stubborn. You're one of the strongest students I've ever had. I don't doubt your judgment," Aizawa says gently, and even though his voice is quiet it seems to echo in the silent room. "If you go down this road, you have to be prepared for what you might find. You might not get the ending you want. This might turn out to be nothing, and if you don't find what you're looking for, it's going to hurt." Katsuki knows that. He knows that it might not be Deku, or that if it is, they might get there just in time to find Izuka dead after all. And he knows that getting his hopes up only to lose Deku all over again will break him even worse than he's already broken. But he doesn't care. He's already screwed up in 1,000 different ways, and he doesn't FANG care if this is the thing that splinters him apart completely. Not if it means there's the slightest chance that he can see Izuku again. I know, he says, and even with everything he's feeling, his voice doesn't waver. He'll do anything if it means finally finding the truth. And even if it's not Deku, maybe someone else's best friend won't have to go through this too. Aizawa hums. Katsuki. He shakes his head, looking Aizawa dead in the eye. I gotta know for sure, sensei, he says, his voice hard. Even if it's nothing, even if it's someone else and he's really dead, I owe it to him to try. I don't care if it rips me apart. That's what I'm afraid of, Aizawa says, and the honest admission hits home. But Katsuki's too wrapped up in his thoughts, in making plans and chasing desperate hopes that are consuming him from the inside, to really register the concern. There's that look in Aizawa's eyes again, like somehow, he knows exactly the sheet that Katsuki is feeling. I'll make some calls. In the meantime, go home. What the F dash? We can't just sit here. Bakugo. Trust me. I won't stop you from pursuing this, but you need to do it the right way. If it is him, going off half-ped on your own isn't going to help him, and you know it. Katsuki opens his mouth to protest again, but Aizawa stops him with a hard look. Besides, he continues, even if it's not Midoriya, the fact is that there's potentially a child in danger here. We have to do this by the book. You know that. I know you know that. Katsuki bites down hard on his bottom lip. He does know that. He's been trained for this kind of sheet, but right now all of that knowledge and logic is being drained away by frustration. He's still overstimulated and overly emotional, and right now he doesn't give a F about training or procedure or anything else. He feels determined enough to tear apart all of Japan if it means finding Deku. Aizawa grabs both of his shoulders, forcing Katsuki to look him in the eye. I don't think I need to tell you what could happen if we jump the gun on this. We don't even know if Midoriya or any other child really exists, but if they do, if whoever is keeping them there finds out we're onto them. Katsuki says in a breath, feeling the fight and the color drain from his whole body. He hadn't thought about that. They might kill him, he says in a low voice, to cover their tracks. Aizawa nods. I know you're frustrated, and all you want to do is go in fire blazing, but we can't yet. Trust me on that. But if we can, you'll be the first to know. Katsuki swallows, feeling his stomach churn at the thought of leaving Deku there for even one more minute. But even with the frustration burning through him, he feels himself deflating again. So what the f do we do then? He asks, his head drooping. He needs to do something other than waiting here. Deku's life might depend on it. Aizawa opens his mouth to say something, but before he can, the door to the infirmary opens. Aizawa! It's All Might, rushing in with wide, frantic eyes. I heard what happened. Is everyone all right? Katsuki swallows, his eyes shifting from Aizawa to their other teacher. He's in his small form today. That particular secret came out last year, much to Katsuki's surprise. Deku would have had 1,000 questions about it. All Might's eyes shift over to where Katsuki is sitting, and the way Katsuki is hunched over and sullen seems to give him pause. Young Bakugo? Are you okay? Katsuki's relationship with All Might is complicated. Having your idol suddenly become your teacher is exciting as F-, but he can never seem to actually get close to the man without feeling his chest ache. For the most part, he's stubbornly resisted any attempts to be near the man beyond what happens in the classroom. But every so often he catches himself seeking him out, for extra training or advice or just to pick his brain. His childish excitement is always at war with his grief whenever All Might is around. He's never been able to hold a decently long conversation with the man without thinking about Deku, about how excited he would have been to meet his idol and learn from him. But when Katsuki tries to keep his distance, he thinks about how Deku would kill him if he didn't take advantage of the opportunity to get close to All Might himself. It's a never-ending cycle of confusion and pain. He's never been able to tell All Might any of this, of course, but maybe now that the whole FING school is going to have to know his whole painful history, he'll finally get his chance. It's not as if he's the first person that Katsuki's been an insufferable. D2 over the past year and a half. Fine, old man, he says, his voice coming out more subdued than it otherwise would have. Aizawa gives him a look like he's FNG concerned again, which makes Katsuki bristle. But a moment later it's gone, and Aizawa turns back to All Might. Toshinori, get Tsukachi on the phone. Tell him I need to speak with him immediately. I need to talk with one of the villains that we brought in today as soon as possible. Find Shinso too, we're going to need him. All Might frowns. I can do that. But Aizawa, what? I'll explain everything later. Just do it fast. All Might looks like he wants to argue, but as Aizawa turns around, his face changes. Aizawa's back is to Katsuki, so he can't see what his expression looks like, but it must be bad, because All Might simply nods, pulling out his phone and exiting the room. Katsuki stands up before Aizawa can turn around again. We're going there, right? Aizawa stares at him a moment, before shaking his head. You're staying here. Go back to the dorms. Get some rest. Katsuki scowls. Effing what? I know you want to do something, but there's nothing for you to do right now. If that villain sees you, he's not going to talk, and we might never find out the truth. Shinso and I will handle it for now. Katsuki makes a noise that's almost a growl. If you think I'm just going to sit here while you FS do all the work, I'm not asking you to. You're too much of a stubborn, brilliant hothead to do that, Aizawa says, in that quiet, gentle tone that Katsuki hates. It makes him feel angry and comforted at the same time, and he doesn't quite know what to do with that. Especially since Aizawa almost never compliments him the way he just did. Once we know the truth about all this, then you can help. But you're unstable right now, don't look at me like that, you know I'm right. You just found out that someone you care for deeply and thought dead might be alive and in danger. Your emotions are clouding your judgment right now. You can't interrogate a villain in this state. Katsuki scowls as the words sink in. He's effing right, Katsuki knows he is, but how the F is he just supposed to sit here while Deku's out who effing knows where? Aizawa looks at him like he knows exactly what he's thinking. I know this is hard. Believe me, he starts, and Katsuki bristles again at that gentle voice. Aizawa never coddles his students, always treats them like heroes and not like kids, and Katsuki can't help the way his face twists into a scowl when he hears that tone. He's so used to adults talking to him like that, looking at him with that DMN sympathetic look in their eyes and telling him I know this is hard, but it's going to get better, someday. But now, that mournful, empathetic look is back in Aizawa's eyes, the one that makes Katsuki wonder who it is that he lost. I would be feeling the same in your position. But if Midoriya is really alive, he needs you at your best. You know that. Katsuki sighs, his shoulders slumping. He does know that, but that doesn't make it hurt any less. Go home, Bakugo, he says softly. If you want to tell the rest of the class about this, then do it. We might need all hands on deck for this one. That one makes Katsuki look back up again. Sensei? Aizawa smiles a real, genuine smile. You might have a second chance here. That's not something that comes around every day. I'm sure the rest of the class would want to help, if they knew how important this is to you. Katsuki swallows. Of course they would. They're heroes. They all care way too damn much. But, is he really going to FING tell them everything? Is he at all ready for that conversation? At the very least, try to clear your head. I promise, I'll come find you as soon as we get some information from the villain. All right. Katsuki swallows. All right, he says quietly. Part of him still can't believe this is really happening. He's feeling more than he's felt in a long, long time, both good and bad. Hope and pain are crisscrossing inside his chest, mixing with anger and fear and creating a toxic cocktail that threatens to knock him off his feet. But somehow, some way, Deku might be alive. Katsuki might be able to see his smile and hear him laugh for real, instead of just in dreams. And that one thought, that tiny sliver of a chance, somehow keeps him standing as he makes his way out the door and tries to take deep breaths. Katsuki doesn't go back to the dorms. He tries to, meandering slowly back towards the dorm buildings with his hands shoved in his pockets and his bottom lip trembling. He's nearly there when he finds himself turning suddenly, walking away from the building and back towards the main campus and still not quite sure where he's really going. He's just restless. He's utterly exhausted and yet his body is thrumming with energy like a live wire at the same time. Everything that he kept locked away for so long is rushing back, and it takes all his willpower not to sprint from the campus and find Deku by any means necessary. He still can't quite believe this is real. The villain's words ring in his ears, and he knows that it can't possibly be a coincidence. But now the doubts are creeping in, and he can't help but wonder if it's not going to be him after all, if the villains were lying. He's so effing happy, so much so that he's having a little trouble processing it. He hasn't been this happy since before Deku vanished. He forgot what it felt like. He's happy and he's anxious and he's wandering around the campus just because his body wants to move and do something with all this nervous energy. He has no idea how he's just supposed to wait here for Aizawa to come find him with news, and he feels as if he's a second away from going stir-crazy already. He doesn't know what to do with himself, and he doesn't know how the hell he's supposed to tell the rest of the class what the F is going on, and he needs to hit something. Tetsugi always goes to the gym when he feels himself getting overwhelmed, and he starts making his way towards the training gyms by ground alpha as he feels the energy coursing through him intensify. Fighting or working out is always the quickest way for him to wind down. He can take out his anger on a punching bag or a training dummy or a set of weights rather than everyone around him. His emotions fluctuate all over the place as he makes his way towards the gym, and maybe if he numbs his brain for a little while he'll stop staring at his phone every 2 minutes waiting for Aizawa to call. Maybe he can get rid of the anxiety coursing through him and avoid blowing the entire FANG dorm sky high. Katsuki's fists pound against the punching bag in a quick rhythm, echoing in the silent room. He feels the ache coursing through his arms, pain radiating from his bruised and bloody knuckles, but he can't bring himself to stop even as he feels the sweat dripping down his back. Fighting is meditative. Fighting is something he's good at. Fighting is something he knows how to FING deal with. Training dummies are scattered around the room, still smoking from where Katsuki blasted them. He ran through most every training drill he knows, until the physical aches began to distract from the mental ones. He has no idea how long he's been here. He's trying not to think about it, because if he does, nothing will stop him from sprinting out the door and going to find Aizawa himself. So he keeps at it, pistoning his arms one after the other as he works the bag. Working out alone when he's like this is usually the best. It keeps him from beating up shitty hair or spark plug or anyone else too badly. It makes him remember that he's the strongest, that he can at least be the best at this even when he feels like he's the worst at everything else. But today, his usual pattern isn't enough, and his thoughts stubbornly bleed through the mid-workout haze. He screws his eyes shut, punching the bag harder in an effort to block out the noise. Deku and Katsuki, at age 7, starting a food fight in the middle of the kitchen when Inko tries to teach them how to make cookies. Katsuki, 3 months after Deku vanished, blowing up an empty classroom and spending the rest of the afternoon crying on the roof of his house. Deku, at age 12, muttering to himself about random design ideas for both of their hero costumes while Katsuki pretends not to listen but hangs on his every word. Katsuki, 2 weeks after the funeral, spending an entire day wandering the city in the pouring rain and stumbling back into the house at midnight, completely drenched. Deku, at age 16, locked in a DMN basement somewhere while a faceless villain sneers at him and laughs. Katsuki lets out a strangled yell, hitting the bag so hard his wrist buckles when that last thought flashes through his brain. He stumbles back a bit, feeling his face twist into a deep frown. Damn it! He yells, letting off a powerful explosion that knocks the bag clear off the hook. He takes deep, heaving breaths as he stares at it, tiny fires radiating from it where it rests on the floor. He can't block the sheet out this time. He can't stay here waiting for news. He needs to... Katsuki? He freezes, slowly turning towards the front of the gym and deflating slightly when he realizes it's not the voice he's been waiting for. His idiot friends are all crowding the door to the gym, watching him with concerned frowns on their faces. Kirishima takes a step closer, while Mina, Kaminari, Siro, and Jiro hang back a bit. You didn't come back to the dorms. Thought we might find you here, Shitty Hair continues, as if Katsuki isn't standing there dripping with sweat and feeling like he's a second away from dissolving into nitroglycerin. Are you okay? Kaminari holds up his hands in a placating gesture. We're worried, man. What happened this morning? What's going on? He thought he was ready for this, but... He's never told anyone in the class about Deku. He's never known how to broach the subject, and he didn't want them thinking badly of him, if they knew. But now they're all standing here looking so FNG worried and concerned that it makes Katsuki's stomach clench painfully. These idiots. He never asked for them to care so effing much. Like Deku would have. Pinky takes a tentative step forward, before coming closer than the rest to stand directly in front of Katsuki. He's still breathing hard, his hair matted and stuck to his forehead. He must look like a wild FING mess, surrounded by smoking training dummies and a broken punching bag and various ashy patches on the gym walls. But apparently his idiot friends don't care about that, as one by one they all step closer until they're all standing right in front of him. They've all known him long enough now that they know he works out when he's upset, and judging by the scene around them they must know it's pretty bad. Katsuki can't bring himself to care. They approach him like he's something fragile, but he supposes that's what he is now, shaky and rocky and trying to balance on unstable footing until he gets that FANG call. Mina rests a tentative hand on his shoulder. She's always been braver than most of his other friends, uncaring that he's liable to explode her in the face and willing to get close to him anyway. He's really effing grateful to her for that. "Hey, Blasty," she says, smiling at him. "Wanna tell us what's going on? You seem really rattled and we all saw you black out this morning." Demend them. The fuckers know what they're doing, of course. They know he's weaker when the exhaustion kicks in, when his brain is numb and the words spill from his lips more freely than they usually do. And they know he's FNG weak for that soft tone of voice, too, the little sheets. They know that poking at the right spot is sometimes enough to make him unravel completely. He stares at them with wide eyes, and for a moment he has no idea what to say. He opens his mouth, and he doesn't know if he's going to tell them to F off and leave him alone or if he's going to spill the whole story right there in the gym. But Jiro saves him from doing either one. "We can stay here and give you some target practice if you still need to hit something," she says quietly. "Or, we can listen? If you want to talk." Katsuki just stares at her for a moment, feeling the blood dripping from his ruined knuckles. He didn't bother to wrap his hands before hitting the bag, and he knows it's going to sting later, but right now he doesn't care. He just stares at Jiro and the others with wide eyes, feeling his heart pounding and his chest heaving. He hates that they all care so much. Deku would be so effing happy for him. Katsuki swallows, his shoulders slumping forward. Finally time to FNG get this over with. He's put it off for so damn long, but if Aizawa comes back with news... Katsuki walks away from them, scooping up his gauntlets from the corner of the room. The rest of his costume is still back at the infirmary, and he's dressed in a simple black tank top and sweats. "Not here," he says, his voice quiet. He's not yelling, not even bothering to resist, and he sees the five of them exchange a look that he doesn't care enough to unpack right now. He's done trying to hide the sheet from them, especially because things might be about to get a lot worse. His idiot friends follow behind him without a word. They walk back to the dorms in silence. Katsuki can tell the idiot squad has questions, but they all hesitate, as if one wrong word will break the fragile peace between them and set Katsuki off. It's happened before, Katsuki can't fault them for thinking that. They make it back to the dorms. Katsuki takes a shower, and the warm water makes him feel mildly more relaxed. He cleans and bandages the cuts on his knuckles, ignoring Todoroki's offer to help when he catches sight of them. He manages to eat something, even though he feels like he might throw it all back up the minute he opens his mouth. And then finally he's standing in front of his door, sliding key into lock as his friends crowd the hallway behind him. Katsuki can feel their eyes glued to his back, the silent questions hanging on the tips of their tongues as he pushes the door open slowly. He's never let anyone in his room. Not once. It's always been off-limits to the rest of the class. No one ever bothered to question why. They just assumed Katsuki would blow them up if they invaded his space. He flicks the lights on as he steps inside, and judging from the quiet gasps that sound from behind him a few moments later, it doesn't take his friends long to figure out why he kept his room a secret. For the most part, his space is pretty ordinary. The bedsheets are a simple forest green, and it's not super cluttered other than a couple of small bookshelves and his desk, shoved into a corner. But The wall above Katsuki's bed and the small cabinet in the corner of the room make Kirishima's eyes widen, make Mina slap a hand over her mouth when she puts two and two together, and make Kaminari look like he's going to cry. Jiro and Shiro simply stare with sad smiles on their faces, as if something they long suspected has finally been confirmed. The wall is covered in pictures, more of them than they ever expected Katsuki to have. They're from various points in his life, from early childhood to right before UA. He can see Kaminari and Shiro exchange a look as they step closer to see. Katsuki actually looks happy in those photos, and he knows they're dying to ask about it. Every picture features Deku in some way. In some he's there alone, doing something dorky that Katsuki wanted to capture, and in others Katsuki is right there next to him, grinning or laughing or ruffling his hair. Katsuki hears the sharp intake of breath from Shiro and the tiny "oh" blasty that slips from Mina's lips when he makes his way over to the small shrine in the corner of the room. He lights the candle, just like he always does, as he feels his friend's gazes burning a hole into his back. Deku's picture is here too, a recent one, where he's smiling brightly and holding up his UA acceptance letter with watery eyes. His parents have a bigger shrine at home, of course, but somehow they managed to convince Aizawa to let him have one here, too. He needed one that was just his. Something he could keep close by. Katsuki sighs, running a hand through his hair and stubbornly avoiding meeting his friend's eyes as he turns back around. He says nothing until he's seated on his bed, his back against the wall and his hands folded in his lap. His name was Izuku, he mutters after a long moment. Izuku Midoriya. Deku. He swallows down the lump in his throat that has risen remarkably quickly. He was my best friend. He died a year ago. Silence blankets the room. The words echo through the air, something heavy and tangible in the small space. He's sure the idiot squad wasn't expecting this when they came in here, but the little sheets wanted to know, didn't they? They're gonna finally have the whole effed up package. Katsuki glares at them when they don't say anything after a few minutes. They all look varying degrees of shocked, and Mina and Kirishima both look horribly sad. Katsuki hates it. "Don't look at me like that," he says, his voice coming out more harsh than he meant it to. "You idiots wanted to know what's going on, didn't you?" Mina recovers first, taking a seat next to Katsuki on the bed. "Of course we do," she says, subtly glaring at the others when they're slow to nod in agreement. "You know we're here for you. We're just, surprised." Sparkplug says, dropping into Katsuki's desk chair. "We weren't expecting that." "I'm sorry, Bakugo," Jiro says quietly. The others echo the sentiment, and even though Katsuki has heard it a million times before, it feels easier to hear this time. Kirishima takes a seat on his other side, as Shiro leans against the wall. "You always seemed like you were keeping something hidden," Shitty Hair says, resting a hand on Katsuki's shoulder. "But I didn't think. I just assumed you had something private going on," and his hand squeezes. "I'm so sorry, Katsuki." Katsuki hums, jerking his head in some sort of quiet acknowledgement. It's so weird to finally say this out loud to all of them, but somehow it doesn't feel quite as soul-crushing as he always thought it would be. Maybe it's because he finally has some hope, for the first time in ages, but he doesn't feel quite so close to shattering. After a moment, he hears a quiet coming from Shiro. "Midoriya. Midoriya. I know that name. Why do I know that name?" Katsuki grimaces. This is the harder part. The part where he starts remembering all the what-ifs. Probably from when we started UA. The entrance exam. At their raised eyebrows, Katsuki shrugs. "He was supposed to start with us. Both of us got in." His voice is practically monotone by now. He doesn't have the energy to pretend to be angry, or strong, or whatever. This sheet is already hard enough. Kaminari gasps. "I remember hearing on the news, there was this kid who went missing right before we started school." "Don't tell me." Katsuki swallows. Feels his lip tremble. "Yeah," he says. "That was him." And he tells them the whole story, from the day Deku disappeared until the heroes came to their house and told them that Izuku had been presumed dead. He tells them about why he's so and angry all the time, and by the looks on their faces, they seem to understand. By the end of it, the entire squad looks upset. Mina and Kaminari have tears trailing down their faces. Kirishima wraps an arm around Katsuki's shoulders, and Katsuki doesn't bother trying to pull away. He's been pushing people away for a whole DMN year. It feels nice to finally let them in. After a few moments of silence, Kaminari is the first one to speak. I remember hearing about it. I really thought the heroes were going to find him. Katsuki lets out a bitter laugh. Yeah. Me too. No one comments on how much pain laces those simple words. So, what happened today then? Shiro asks. Is it something to do with him? Katsuki esigues in a breath. He got so wrapped up in the past that he almost forgot about the present. His back straightens slightly, his voice growing more animated. Deku's quirk was resurrection. He could bring people or animals back from the dead as long as he got to them within 7 minutes. The bigger the wound or deeper the illness, the more energy it took. Katsuki runs a hand through his hair. The villain I was fighting. He mentioned something about a gunshot wound to the heart. About how his boss has been keeping a kid with green hair locked in the basement, and the kid brought him back. Jiro gasps. You think he's alive? Being held somewhere this whole time? Katsuki nods, swallowing thickly. It's too DMN perfect to be a coincidence. Sensei and Mindfuck went to talk to the a-hole, but they made me wait here. Aizawa was worried about me doing something reckless. Kaminari is smiling now. But he's alive. That's so great, man. What can we do to help? The rest of them are all smiling now, but Katsuki shakes his head. The workout definitely helped. He's got a little more perspective now. He might be. Might not. Don't know for sure yet. I really effing hope he is. A moment later, he laughs again. How effed is that? He says bitterly. I want him to be alive so DMN bad, but if he is alive then it means he's been held by a villain this whole DMN time. Means he's been suffering this whole DMN time. Feels shitty to wish that on him. Jiro shakes her head. It's not shitty, she says. If he's alive, then there's a chance to save him. Get him back. It's not a bad thing to wish for that. You spent this whole time thinking you wouldn't get that chance. Kirishima nods next to him, squeezing him lightly. We're here for you, man. If Aizawa gets some info out of the villain, we'll help with whatever comes next, okay? If it turns out he's alive, we'll get him back. Katsuki feels his stomach clench. Thanks, idiots, he says. It's so simple a statement, to cover everything he's feeling. Silence descends over the room again. Katsuki's restlessness is coming back, and he finds himself staring at his phone as if just by looking at it he can make Aizawa call. After a few minutes, Mina reaches for his hand, squeezing lightly. Do you want to tell us about him? Katsuki frowns. Does he? Should he? Would these idiots even care about that sheet? Some of it's embarrassing as hell, and they'll never look at him the same. But maybe they're past that point already. Pressure on his hand again. You can if you want, Mina says. Shitty hair and the others nod their heads in agreement. Raccoon Eyes threads her fingers through his. The touch is reassuring, and it reminds him of back before you, when it was Deku's hand he was holding instead. He doesn't say anything for a moment, but his head tilts downwards, his eyes drifting towards the bracelet on his wrist. Idly, almost without thinking, his other hand reaches towards it, his fingers running over the small band. Look, Kaken. Isn't it pretty? Now we can match. He gave this to me when we were 6, he says, his voice quiet. It's a simple bracelet, a string made of interlocking colors woven into a crisscross pattern. His mom was teaching him how to be all crafty, and he made it for me, 'cause he thought bracelets were cute. Made himself one to match. I always thought it was so dorky, but I haven't taken it off since he. I always wondered why you wore that everywhere, Kaminari says when his voice falters, a small smile on his face. It never seemed like your style. I figured you'd blow me up if I ever asked about it, though. It makes Katsuki smile too in spite of everything. He's quiet again for a moment, before taking a deep breath. He loved heroes. It was all he ever talked about. He worshipped All Might, and his dream was to be just like him. Was a super fanboy for anything even vaguely hero-related. He had the biggest merch collection on the planet. Most of the hero stuff I have in here was stuff that his mom let me keep after. His voice still gets stuck on the D word. Kaminari, Siro and Jiro have moved closer, so that the five of them now form a small semicircle around Katsuki as he talks. There they go, being too fing nice again, willing to listen to his stupid grief like they really do care. It makes his insides churn. He was an idiot, he continues. He was this nerdy dumbass that used to follow me around all the time. Our moms have been friends for years, so I've known him since I can remember. He was so stupid and he would get into trouble constantly, but he was also the smartest person I've ever met, and he could do anything he put his mind to. Katsuki's face is wet, he knows. The words don't stop coming, though, and he keeps going despite the fact that he's crying in front of his idiot friends. He was beautiful and funny and so stubborn it would make me want to explode a building sometimes. He had this big dumb smile on his face all the time, and half the shit I know about being a hero came from him. He hated scary movies and he was terrified of letting people down, and he loved katsudon more than anything. Once I figured out I liked cooking, he would ask me to make it for him all the time. He said he liked mine the best. Siro is this in a breath, his eyes shining. Is that why you make katsudon for people on special occasions? Katsuki grimaces but doesn't respond. He doesn't have to though. They can see the answer written all over his face. Katsuki pauses, taking a deep breath and wiping at his eyes. It's always bittersweet to talk about this sheet, talk about the good times instead of the bad. It makes him feel warm all over, until the ice stabs him in the chest again. Finally, after a moment, he sighs. He made me smile. More than anyone else ever has. Katsuki misses him so much. He really hopes he's right about this. Kirishima sniffles, and when Katsuki looks over he can see that he's crying too. He's always been an easy crier, like Deku. Tears are manly, he always says. He sounds really special, Shitty Hair says. I really wish I could have met him. Katsuki laughs. He would have loved you idiots, he says, sniffling. Would have spent hours rambling on about your quirks and given you notebooks full of tips on how to use them better when you fight. After another pause, he smiles. He was special, he whispers. It's corny as hell, but the demon's sun came out whenever he was around. And there was a little while, before he disappeared, when we thought we were almost more. They were going to be more, and Katsuki can't forget it. Katsuki feels. Mina squeezes his hand again, and he knows she understands what he was trying to say. You liked him, she says sadly. He laughs. He liked him. He was terrified of him. He wanted to hit him, sometimes. He wanted to grab him and hold him and never let him go. He wanted him. Yeah, Katsuki mutters. Maybe. Never got a chance to really figure it all out. They all fall silent again. There's nothing more to say, really, but Katsuki can't help but appreciate them all for listening to him ramble about his shitty feelings for a while. He can't help but feel a little lighter now that he's gotten it all off his chest. Maybe all those therapists were onto something when they kept telling him to talk about his issues. After a long while of comfortable silence, of the idiot squad seemingly being content to just sit here with Katsuki until he's ready to move, there is a knock at his door. Katsuki doesn't miss a beat, getting up and sprinting towards it despite the fact that his face is still tear-stained. He was expecting a phone call, but Aizawa stands on the other side of the door, Shinso hanging back behind him on his left side. Katsuki can feel his hands trembling. Well, he says, trying very hard to keep his voice steady. He feels Shitty Hair and the others move towards the door, trying to offer whatever support they can, but all he can focus on is their teacher. What's the situation? Please be him, please be him, please say that Deku's alive, please. Aizawa stares at him for a long moment, and Katsuki feels something shatter in his core. No please. But a moment later, Aizawa's lip quirks upwards. The villain you were fighting is a low-level member of a Yakuza group known as the Shai Hasaikai. We questioned him for a long time. Katsuki swallows. And? He feels Kirishima's hand come to rest on his shoulder. He was surprisingly talkative once Shinso got the go-ahead to use his quirk. From behind Aizawa, Mindfuck is smiling too, and he nods his head once at Katsuki. Fucking, say it already, come on. The villain recognized the photograph we showed him. He positively identified Izuku Midoriya as the boy being held captive who saved his life 1 month ago. Katsuki freezes. Everything is white noise for a moment, as those words sink in. He can feel his eyes watering again. Aizawa's smile gets bigger until he's full-on grinning. You were right, Bakugo. Your friend is alive. We can save him. Katsuki sobs, stumbling forward and wrapping his arms around Aizawa's waist. Aizawa tenses for a moment, as if he wasn't prepared for that. Hell, Katsuki wasn't prepared for that. On a different day, he would be swearing everyone present to secrecy and vehemently denying that this ever happened. But Deku is alive. He's really alive. Some part of him was still hesitant to believe it, before now. Aizawa's hand comes up to rest on the top of his head, hesitant but reassuring as his other arm rests on Katsuki's back. Katsuki struggles to contain himself, but he can't quite keep the sobs in from joy and not despair, for the first time he can remember. After a few moments, he pulls back from Aizawa, wiping at his eyes and fighting the flush creeping up his neck. His reputation is never going to recover from this, but it's almost an afterthought next to everything else he's feeling. He can feel Kirishima's hand on his shoulder, hear his friend's muted excitement coming from behind him. But after a moment he takes a deep breath, fighting the tears for a little longer to stare at Aizawa seriously. What's the plan? He asks, his voice hard. Behind him, the others shut up, staring at Aizawa with the same intense expression. Katsuki resolves to make them all dinner sometime this week. But Aizawa shakes his head. It's late. There's nothing more we can do today. Katsuki jolts. He didn't realize what time it actually was. Between everything that happened today, he was too preoccupied to really care. But he opens his mouth to protest. They need to. Aizawa holds up a hand. Tsukachi is calling in a few favors. Apparently this isn't the first time that the Shy Hasaikai has gotten onto the hero's radar. There's a meeting tomorrow between a few different agencies. Katsuki's brow furrows. I'm going, he says. Aizawa would have to chain him to the DMN building to make him stay away. But then Katsuki frowns. Auntie Inko Midoriya. His mom. She needs to know. She should hear it from me. Aizawa thinks for a moment, before he nods. The meeting is in the morning. We should compare notes. Get a sense of what the situation is. Then we'll tell her if it seems like we have some more concrete information. Their teacher glances at the rest of them. I expect you'll be there as well, Kirishima. Fat Gum was on Tsukachi's list. Kirishima looks surprised, but he nods a moment later. And the rest of us? Kaminari pipes up. How can we help? Aizawa sighs, suddenly looking more tired than they've seen him in a long time. Katsuki can't blame him, even with how happy he is, he feels the same. Some of your supervisors are already being briefed, their teacher says. As for the rest of you, we'll discuss it when we know more. For a moment Katsuki thinks he has nothing more to say, but after a brief pause, he squeezes Katsuki's shoulder. We're not out of the woods yet, he says quietly. But I'm happy for you, Bakugo. Try and get some rest. Katsuki stumbles back into his room in a daze, after he vacates the hallway. His friends are talking, but whatever they're saying doesn't register. Katsuki has a giant, genuine smile on his face for the first time in years, and he can't stop replaying Aizawa's words over and over in his head. Holy shit, he whispers, staring at the idiot squad in disbelief. He has a chance. His friends stick around for a while, talking about plans and possibilities and letting Katsuki ramble on about Deku in a significantly happier tone, this time. And when they leave, he cries again, sobbing into a pillow from a mixture of relief and guilt as all of his warring emotions burst forth again. It's a long, long time before he manages to get any sleep. There are a lot of pros here. Surprisingly, Aizawa didn't fight Katsuki nearly as much as the latter expected him to when he insisted on coming. Maybe it was because he knew that Katsuki would have simply gone anyway, but Aizawa just sighed, making him promise not to yell too loudly. Katsuki rolled his eyes, muttering a small no promises. At least he's allowed to actually do something this time. That's more than he could really ask for. Katsuki scans the room, noticing some familiar faces. He nods at Kirishima when the latter waves from across the room. He recognizes most of the pros here, and as he takes note of each one, he can hear Deku's voice inside his head, shouting their names in that fanboy voice of his. Now that he knows Deku is alive, it doesn't feel quite as painful. Gang Orca, Ryukyu, Fat Gum, Sir Nightai, all of the big three, UA students that had graduated the year prior. Lemillion, Sun Eater, and Nijire-chan, seated next to each other and talking amongst themselves. Rocklock, All Might, standing in the back next to Aizawa. A few more that Katsuki doesn't recognize. Tsukachi must have called in a lot of favors. Either that, or Deku's mixed up in something bigger than Katsuki thought. He would be the idiot, Katsuki muses, smiling in spite of himself. Deku always had a knack for finding trouble wherever he went. Cause he doesn't have to think in past tense anymore, and that thought sends a pleasant jolt through Katsuki's insides. He's mostly silent for the first bit of the meeting. He's not really paying much attention beyond picking up what he needs to know. The pros have been tracking the Shy Hasaikai for a while now. They're implicated in a number of crimes of all different types. He listens as Night Eye drones on about some recon they've been doing, and he starts growing increasingly frustrated as the meeting seems to drag on without much progress. And then, finally, there's more. We have recently discovered that Kai Chisaki, alias Overhaul and leader of this group, has been holding a teenager hostage for over a year. Katsuki straightens his back, his brow furrowing. Midoriya, he says, glaring daggers at the room. His name is Izuku Midoriya. He can't say why it makes him angry that Glasses didn't use Deku's name, but suddenly every eye in the room is on him. Katsuki can see Aizawa press a hand to his temple, but he doesn't bother to rein him in. And it's been a year and a half. Some of the gathered pros raise an eyebrow. And who might you be? Ryukyu asks, her voice curious but not angry. Lemillion is actually smiling at him. Rocklock, seated 2 seats to his left, scoffs, and Katsuki turns his glare towards him. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask. Why is this kid here? He hardly looks like a pro. Katsuki stands up, leaning over the table. Eho, he growls. That kid is my best fucking friend, and I'm a hero the same as the rest of you. His hands smoke dangerously, his temper rising along with the heat in his palms. Silence falls over the room for a moment, until Aizawa breaks it with a loud sigh. He and All Might both step forward, so they can address everyone present. Bakugo is here because he's familiar with the case. He is one of UA's best, and he'll be an asset on the search. Not to mention that if you try to stop him, he'll probably explode you. Katsuki can't help the dangerous smile that spreads across his face, and he sits back down with a satisfied heh. All Might nods in agreement. Dynamite is UA's top student, and he's a natural leader. He's unmatched on the battlefield, and we're going to need his quick thinking and tactical mind here. Katsuki feels his stomach clench. That is high praise, coming from the old man. Katsuki hasn't even really done anything to earn that. All he's done is be to him, over the past few years. Night Eye clears his throat. If we're all done, he deadpants. Bakugo's encounter with a low-level Hasaikai member gave us the break about Midoriya's kidnapping, making this an even higher priority mission. If it weren't for him, we wouldn't have the push we needed to accelerate our timeline for capturing their leader. Night Eye's gaze falls on him, and Katsuki can't help the way he shifts in his seat. A child in danger does complicate things, Gang Orca muses. Do we know where they're holding him? That's the tricky part, Night Eye says. What? The F? Do you mean that's the tricky part? Katsuki yells. We're gonna fucking find him, right? His voice is growing frantic, but he doesn't care. If they don't actually know where Deku is? Problem child, take a breath, Aizawa says, suddenly standing behind him. Let him finish. Lemillion gives him a knowing look. I'm sorry, Bakugo, he says, his usual smile gone. If you two are close, this must be hard. But I'm sure Sir has a plan. A moment later, he turns towards the front of the room. We do have a plan, right? Glasses smirks, still looking at Katsuki as he taps a button on the computer in front of him. We do indeed have a plan. He presses down on a key, and immediately a map pops up on the screen behind him. We don't know much about how this group operates, he starts. But what we do know is that they're organized, established, and with considerable resources. We've compiled a list of known property owned by Chisaki and the Hasaikai, from existing recon and from intel provided by captured Hasaikai members. Altogether, there are 28 possible locations. 20? That number rings through Katsuki's brain, and he slumps back in his seat. How the F are they supposed to find him? Katsuki doesn't know if Night Eye senses that he's building towards another outburst, because he quickly starts talking again as his sidekicks start passing out files. We're in touch with pros in other cities as we speak. We'll be splitting into teams, casing the various locations and searching for any data that might help indicate where Midoriya is being held. Once we know where he is, then we kick their butts, Katsuki finishes. Surprisingly, Night Eye smiles. Not the most elegant way to put it, but yes. Then we kick their butts. He stands up, surveying the room with his piercing gaze. It's eerily similar to the way Aizawa stares at their class, sometimes. You all have your assignments. This is a top priority, people. Not only does this connect to trigger distribution, but a child's life is on the line here. Report any news to my agency, and when we have enough to launch a coordinated strike, be ready. Katsuki doesn't give a DMN about trigger. He doesn't even know what it means, or what the hell else the heroes are so interested in the Hasaikai for. He just cares about finding Deku. And he finally feels useful again. Deku was always trying to be too nice for his own good. Helping Katsuki train, helping him learn, helping him think about things that weren't hero work and picking him up when he spiraled out of control. He was always so good, and maybe this time, Katsuki can finally return the favor. The meeting ended without much fanfare after that. Each of the hero teams leaves with their respective assignments and a promise to contact Night Eye with any news. Kirishima squeezed his shoulder before Katsuki climbed into a police car with Aizawa and Tsukachi, and it helped calm his nerves a little bit. They're driving towards his parents' house. Katsuki had already called ahead, asking his mom to call Inko to the house. He had something important to tell them both, he said. Aizawa glances down at him. I'm still not sure we should say anything at this stage. This could still go badly, and if we get Mrs. Midoriya's hopes up. I agree, Tsukachi says. It might be worth waiting. Katsuki thinks for a moment, before shaking his head. No, he says. If the press gets wind of this and Annie finds out from seeing it on the news, she should hear it from us. And it's not going to FNG go badly. We're gonna bring Deku back. He refuses to believe anything else. And besides, even if it does go south, at least she'll finally get some closure. She'll know what happened to him. Aizawa and Tsukachi seem satisfied with that. It would help to get some information from her about the original investigation. Tsukachi muses. You know her best, Aizawa says. Katsuki will never admit how much it means to him that Aizawa trusts his judgments so implicitly. They make it to his house with blessedly little traffic. Katsuki is antsy as shit as they walk up to the door, and it only gets worse as they knock loudly, waiting for someone to open it. Mitsuki Bakugo stands at the door a moment later, looking at Katsuki for a moment before glancing at Aizawa and Tsukachi. She pauses for a second, before sighing loudly. What did the brat do this time? She asks. Her voice isn't overly angry. They've been here before, in the months after Deku disappeared. Katsuki has shown up with a teacher or a police officer in tow a couple of times, when the pain got overwhelming and he started acting out instead of keeping it all inside. Mitsuki doesn't wait for them to answer, instead letting them into the house without another word. Katsuki's family life is complicated. He loves his parents, but he and his mother are exact carbon copies of each other, and it hasn't made for the easiest time living in the same house. He would butt heads with his mother all the time, with his father doing his best to act as the middleman. His mom always wanted him to be the strongest above all else, and she didn't always have the best methods of drilling that drive to be the best into his head. Still, he's grateful for it. Without it, he probably wouldn't have survived this long. After Deku disappeared, things started changing, slowly but surely. Katsuki was not handling things well. Between thinking about Izuku and worrying that all this sheet was going to affect his schoolwork, he was terrified that his mother would react badly if she found out how badly he was struggling. He makes his way into the living room, where Masaru Bakugo and Inko Midoriya are already seated on the couch. "Katsuki?" his father asks, with a small smile on his face. "Is everything okay?" Katsuki's father, on the other hand, is the level-headed one. He keeps the peace when Katsuki and Mitsuki blow up in each other's faces, and somehow has managed to stay sane while doing it. It was Masaru who got Katsuki to admit how badly he was really doing after Deku died. He encouraged Katsuki to actually talk to his mother about it, and, well, when Mitsuki saw that Katsuki thought he needed to hide, to lie about being okay even when he really wasn't, it was a wake-up call for all of them. Mitsuki's rough edges softened considerably after that, and even though their relationship is still volatile and violent at times, it's improved immensely. Sometimes grief does that. Katsuki nods a greeting at his parents. "Hey heck, Dad." But his eyes shift to Inko, smiling up at him from the couch after only a moment. He hasn't seen her in a while. He promised Deku that he would visit as often as he could, take care of his mom, but school and hero work has been getting in the way lately. "Katsuki, it's great to see you," Inko says warmly, standing up to wrap him in a hug and kiss him on the cheek. Aizawa clears his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Bakugo. Mrs. Midoriya, I'm Eraserhead, Katsuki's teacher." "Detective Tsukachi," the police officer says from behind them. Mitsuki raises an eyebrow at Katsuki as she takes a seat next to Inko. "What's this about, brat?" Tsukachi takes a seat on the couch opposite her when she gestures for him to do so. "Got something to tell you guys," Katsuki says, suddenly feeling nervous. The words get caught in his throat. He's never been good at this part of the hero gig. The part that requires actually talking to people. The part that means comforting civilians and knowing how to tell a mother who thought her son was dead that he's actually been a prisoner this whole time instead. Deku would be a FING pro at this. Fortunately, Aizawa takes over, patting Katsuki's shoulder when his voice dies. He stares straight ahead, looking each of the three adults in the eye one by one, before he sighs. "This might not be easy to hear, but Bakugo thought it was best that you heard it from us first." He takes a breath, before focusing on Inko's face. "We have reason to believe that Izuku Midoriya is alive." Dead silence. Katsuki's eyes are locked onto Inko's face, which has gone deathly pale. Her hands shake, and her eyes are rapidly filling with tears. Easy crying is a trait the Midoriyas have in common. Mitsuki and Masaru are similarly dumbstruck, and while Mitsuki reaches for Inko, Masaru stares at Katsuki with an impossibly sad expression. "Katsuki," he starts. I know how it sounds," Katsuki says, his voice sounding wrecked. "But it's true. It's a villain I was fighting mentioned something." "How?" Inko says, her voice barely above a whisper. That's not possible. The police, the heroes, they said my baby was dead. He's dead." Tears are falling down her face, and Katsuki's face twists as he glances towards Tsukachi for some assistance. The detective takes over, explaining the situation as concisely and gently as possible. Katsuki's own eyes start to well up as he and Aizawa talk, relaying the events of the past 2 days as quickly as possible. Finally, Katsuki looks up, first at his parents and then at Inko. "I heard him, Auntie," he says, his eyes locked with hers. "He said his boss had Deku trapped somewhere, and he saved his life. He's alive." Tsukachi clears his throat. "We detained a villain who positively identified Midoriya as being present at a villain's compound as recently as 1 month ago. He was under the influence of a quirk that compelled the truth at the time." "Thank you, mindfuck," Katsuki can't help but think. "I know this must be hard to hear," Tsukachi continues. But he's cut off by a gut-wrenching noise, somewhere between a sob and a scream, as Inko leaps off the couch and pulls Katsuki into a crushing hug. She's crying so loudly that Katsuki can't hear anything that's being said behind them, and after a brief moment of surprise, Katsuki hugs her back. He's alive. My baby is alive. I can't believe it." Inko is practically hysterical now, and Katsuki glances at his parents for help only to realize they're crying, too. I can't either, Katsuki mutters. Figures Deku would be too stubborn to die, though. Against all odds, it makes Inko laugh. She looks up, taking Katsuki's face in her hands. You found him, Inko whispers. After all this time? You always said you were going to find him, and now. Katsuki swallows down the lump building in his throat. Haven't done it yet, Auntie, he says, patting the top of her head. But we're looking. Inko smiles at him, before turning towards Tsukachi. Tell me everything, she says, her expression hard. That's the Inko Midoriya Katsuki knows, just as fiercely determined and hard-headed as her son. Tsukachi and Aizawa start talking, briefing Inko on the plan, the situation, everything. Katsuki, feeling impossibly overwhelmed again, makes his way into the kitchen while they fill Inko in. Katsuki braces his hands on the kitchen counter and just breathes. For a moment, he takes deep, heaving breaths, the lump in his throat growing bigger as the reality of the situation crashes down on him. Deku is alive, but there's still so many ways this could go wrong. They could get there too late, they could be holding him at some other location the heroes don't know about. So many shitty possibilities. And listening to Inko sob, giving her hope only to have it potentially be shattered again, feels. Hey kiddo. Katsuki esikaes in a breath. He was so focused on his thoughts that he didn't see anyone enter the kitchen, but when he turns around, his father is standing just behind him. Katsuki swallows. He doesn't know what his face looks like right now, but he feels the emotion building again. He feels like he's been ripped open and rubbed raw for 2 days straight, his emotional battery strained to well past its limits. He doesn't see his mother anywhere, but he figures she must still be with Inko. Katsuki stares at his father, who is giving him a small smile that Katsuki can't help but look away from. I figured she should know. She's been through hell, and even though he's still in danger, Katsuki doesn't get to finish. He feels a gentle touch on his arm before Masaru drags him forward, pulling him in for a hug. He's not usually a big hugger or big on touch at all really, but right now everything feels like too much, and it's been a long-ass sheet couple of days, and Katsuki lets out a tiny noise, burying his face in his father's neck. His dad always gave good hugs, when he really needed them. I'm really happy for you, Katsuki, he says softly, stroking Katsuki's hair. Damn it, he's going to cry again. His eyes are wet, and he can feel a couple of stubborn tears leak out at those soft words. They've been there for him through this whole shitty time, seen all the ways his effed-up brain tried to deal with this sheet, and now. He's alive, Dad, Katsuki chokes out. He's really alive. Masaru tugs him closer, and after a few minutes Katsuki feels another set of soft hands on his shoulders that mean Mitsuki must be here too. Katsuki hasn't done this since the day after the funeral, when he collapsed into sobs on their living room couch and didn't bother to complain about his parents holding him like a small child. But now Katsuki is wrapped up in another group hug, crying tears. Of joy. How is he not out of tears after the events of the past couple days? And feeling like this stupid group hug is the only thing holding him upright. Maybe Inko even joins in at some point, he wouldn't know. It seems cathartic in a way. One big emotional outburst at the start of all this, and maybe he'll have the energy to bottle up his DMN feelings for long enough to go drag the idiot out of hell. He feels like a sponge, his emotions being wrung from him like water from a rag, until he's eventually bled dry and he can go pull Deku out of whatever basement he got himself trapped in. Maybe he's earned this, after so long spent keeping things bottled up and trying to pretend he's okay. Trying to pretend like he hasn't been living with a Deku-shaped hole in his chest. You're going to find him, brat, Mitsuki whispers, kissing the top of his head. You're a lot stronger and smarter now. The villains don't stand a chance. Katsuki really hopes she's right. There's still a hell of a lot they need to do before they get there, though. When Aizawa and Katsuki get back to you, Katsuki is startled to see the entire class assembled outside the dorm and waiting for them. All of them are wearing matching serious expressions, and Katsuki can't help but raise an eyebrow at them as they make their way towards the door. He's already wrung out from talking to Inko and his parents. He doesn't think he can take any more surprises. The F is going on, glasses? He asks as Ida steps forward. Katsuki glances over to see Aizawa raising an eyebrow as well. Ida clears his throat, squaring his shoulders and looking directly at them. How can we help? Katsuki tenses, immediately making eye contact with Kaminari, who shrugs apologetically. We told the rest of the class what was going on. I know you kept it private for ages, but you expected us to just sit around and let you do this on your own. He freezes, letting the words wash over him. He's not quite sure what's happening to his insides right now, but the knowledge that the entire class would come on board immediately, just for his sake, makes his stomach flip in all kinds of uncomfortable ways. He doesn't even care that they all know his secret. He's too busy figuring out how to restart his brain. Aizawa hums. There's already a plan underway, he says. And your schoolwork. All due respect, sir, says Uraraka, cutting in. But we're heroes. There's a kid in danger, and Bakugo is our friend. We want to help. Katsuki swallows down the sudden lump in his throat. He's been such but over the past year or so that he wasn't even sure some of the class considered him a friend. Honestly, this whole time, he thought the jury was out on anyone who wasn't in his core friend group. Kirishima already briefed us on the hero's plan, Yayarosa says. With all of us assisting, we should be able to cover more ground. Ida and I have already drafted up a plan that should work well with Sir Nighteyes. Strategy. Katsuki falters for a moment, not quite knowing what to say. But after a brief pause, he shakes his head. You extras don't have to, he clears his throat. This isn't your fight. Todoroki shakes his head. Kaminari said that Midoriya was supposed to start UA with us. That makes him one of us. So yeah, it is. Ida nods, and Katsuki feels his respect for him increase drastically. Sir, he says, addressing Aizawa directly. We are students, but most of us are already experienced at search and rescue operations. And if anything goes wrong, I will personally take responsibility as the class representative. Would it be too much for Katsuki to make them all dinner for the next month? Aizawa sighs, but Katsuki can see him smiling underneath it. You kids are going to be the death of me. The class starts to get visibly excited, but before they can really celebrate, Aizawa holds up a hand. Each of you has to get approval from your respective supervisors. And I expect you to keep up with your coursework. I won't have you falling behind. All 19 of them nod. Yes, sir, the class says as a collective unit. Katsuki nearly weeps for the umpteenth time in 2 days. The next few weeks are hard. Some of the hardest of Katsuki's life. In the weeks after Deku died, Katsuki felt as if he was stuck in a hole he would never be able to crawl out of. Every move he made felt like it came at the end of running a marathon at full power, and some days it was hard even to just get out of bed. Those days were rough, but at least he knew what to expect for the most part. He got used to feeling like that after a while. He got to a point where he could manage just fine, even if he was snapping at people left and right. Eventually, the anger became familiar. This is a whole new kind of difficult. Katsuki likes knowing what to expect. But now he just feels vaguely volatile, like a different concoction is being made to order in the pit of his stomach every single day. Sometimes he wakes up and he's super optimistic, thinking today will be the day they'll finally catch a break and Deku's going to be fine. Sometimes he's filled with anguish, wondering how in the F they're ever going to find him if everything the heroes say about the Shy Hasaikai is true. And sometimes he gets so frustrated and angry that he nearly explodes anything in his path. It's hard, but the thought of finally finding the nerd at the end of all this somehow keeps him standing. Nighteyes' plan to split into teams and stake out the various Hasaikai hideouts proved to be a good one. Katsuki can't help but begrudgingly acknowledge the logic, even though it's frustrating as hell that they can't just start kicking down doors. Most everyone in the class is out in the field, gathering intel and relaying it back to the makeshift control room at Nighteyes' agency. Some days, the field teams have nothing to report, while others are more productive. After the first week, they only manage to knock 2 hideouts off the list, and Katsuki feels the hopelessness start to creep in. The second proves more fruitful, another 5 places are eliminated. This would be so much easier if Katsuki was actually in the field with them. But instead he's stuck at this stupid command post, helping All Might and Night Eye and Aizawa, when he can be here, sift through recon reports and keep track of where everyone is. Katsuki chose to be there, of course, but that doesn't make it any less hard to handle. He wanted to be in the field at first. He wanted to feel like he was doing something, helping to get boots on the ground and actually look for the idiot. But then, he remembered the first time this happened, how he blindly trusted the authorities to get shit done after they said he couldn't help. How they failed. After that, the choice to help run the command post was easy. They couldn't afford any mistakes this time. Night Eye and the other heroes grumbled about it at first. They wondered why the hell this obnoxious kid didn't trust them to do their jobs, and they worried that Katsuki was too close to the case to see things clearly. But then they saw how determined Katsuki was, how laser-focused on the job and, probably, how much he needed this, and they stopped questioning it. Katsuki even catches Night Eye giving him an approving glance, sometimes. The rest of the class comes to visit when they can. In between days spent in the field and in class, most of them manage to make it down to Night Eye's agency, trying their best to help out where they can and trying to distract Katsuki in the process. It helps, on days where he's especially frustrated or filled with despair. His squad comes by more often than anyone else. They keep him company on some of the long days, take him to the gym when he really needs to cool off, and help talk him down when he starts to get too wrapped up in his own head. Kaminari and Jiro bring him his favorite snacks, and Mina massages his shoulders as a way to at least try and make him relax. Shiro is the voice of reason, reminding Katsuki that Deku needs him at his best, and that they've got almost every hero in the vicinity working this case. Katsuki is so grateful for all of them. Kirishima stays with him most of all. He comes by Night Eye's agency almost every day, at least for a few minutes before heading out into the field. He walks Katsuki to class every morning, sometimes silently, and sometimes listening to Katsuki rant about the too slow progress they've been making. He lets Katsuki spar with him whenever he wants, under the guise of wanting to be ready for the eventual battle. But really, it's just to make Katsuki smile for a little bit, and Katsuki knows it. He holds Katsuki when he breaks down one night, after 18 days have gone by with only half of the possible locations crossed off the list. He's just a rock, both physically and metaphorically. He's a lot like Deku in so many ways. And every tiny reminder of the nerd makes Katsuki feel more and more like they may never find Izuku at all. Tonight, Katsuki stands hunched over the small table in the center of Night Eye's command post, sifting through security camera footage and listening to Rocklock and Ryukyu's reports. It's just more of the same. A whole lot of nothing without a single sign of where the idiot could be. Katsuki grits his teeth, clenching his fists on the table and trying to take deep breaths. Tea, young Bakugo? Katsuki jumps. All Might is standing behind him, offering him a mug of tea with a small smile on his face. He grits his teeth, but accepts the mug with a small nod. Thanks, he mutters. That's another thing that's been bugging him about all this. Katsuki insisted on staying at the command post, but that means that he's been spending more time with All Might than he ever has outside of school before. The old man may not be the symbol of peace anymore, but he definitely still has some serious clout in the hero scene, and he's been using it to their advantage. All Might has called in so many favors, willing to help out however he can despite his relationships with both Night Eye and Katsuki being strained at best. Maybe it's because he's got some sort of secret gig going on with Lemillion. The two of them are known to spend a lot of time together. All Might trained him separately from everyone else. But even so, Katsuki can't help but wonder why he stays, listening to Katsuki yell and snap at everyone when he could be coordinating with Tsukachi somewhere else. How are you holding up? All Might asks, all smiles when he really shouldn't be. He's always been nice like that, even if he isn't always the best teacher. Katsuki's shoulders hitch. How the f do you think? All Might's lips turn downwards, and he nods as if he expected that. There's silence for a moment and then, we're doing the best we can. You're doing the best you can. We'll find him. Katsuki practically growls at him. It's late and he's tired and he didn't even ask for an inspirational FNG speech from All Might of all people. I know, he says. But somehow, despite his anger, his voice comes out low and monotone instead of as the angry retort he hoped for. Maybe he isn't really as put together as he thinks. Maybe it's all weighing on him more than he thought, the days without any leads growing longer and longer and threatening to eclipse any hope he has left. Maybe the anger isn't enough to keep him going anymore. Katsuki snatches up the mug of tea to distract from his slip-up, taking a sip despite the way it burns too hot as it goes down. With a jolt, he realized that it's his favorite tea. It's the one he started drinking after Deku died, when his dad would make it for him on bad nights. All Might catches the way his eyes widen and he smiles. Kirishima said this one was your favorite. Katsuki scoffs to cover the way his stomach flips, going back to poring over the surveillance camera footage. There's silence for a few minutes, before All Might takes a seat across the table and pulls out a stack of files. The hell are you doing? He doesn't seem to care that Katsuki very obviously doesn't want him here. Nitai's agency is backed up on their paperwork because of the search. Figured I'd help him pick up the slack, even if he keeps telling me to leave it alone. Katsuki bites his lip, but doesn't protest further. There he goes again, willing to help out despite being powerless and retired and well within his rights to tell Katsuki to F off because all he's done is treat him like shit and keep him at arm's length. And yet, here he is, still here and helping search for Katsuki's best friend like it's no trouble at all. They're all so willing to help, despite the fact that Katsuki's an emotionally stunted, heartbroken gremlin at best and an absolute monster at worst. Even if they find the nerd, he has no idea how he's going to manage to make it up to them all. Katsuki glances up at All Might, who is seemingly oblivious to the storm raging in Katsuki's head. He swallows, his mind replaying the messy history between himself and his teacher. Maybe it's too little, too late, but he may as well start trying now, right? He sighs. Deku worships you, you know. All Might looks up, his expression one of curiosity. Katsuki's head tilts downwards, his eyes firmly fixed on the table in front of him as he talks. His whole life he looked up to you so much. The only reason he wanted to go to UA was because you did. Katsuki hears the chair squeak, like All Might has leaned back to focus on him, but he doesn't look up. He fucking knew every single stupid piece of trivia about you there ever was. We both admired you, but for him, you were everything he wanted to be. Bakugo, Katsuki continues before he can finish. He would have been so happy to meet you. You would have been sick of him on the first day of class. He can hear All Might's footsteps, like he's walking closer, but Katsuki still doesn't look at him. It's hard enough to tell him all this without having to look the man in the eye while he does. I could never look at you without thinking about him. I wanted to learn from you, but every time I tried to talk to you I would feel guilty as hell, 'cause he... A bony hand finds his shoulder. I know. Katsuki glances up in surprise, only to find All Might smiling fondly at him. Katsuki tenses all over. How the f could you know? I never said sheet. All Might squeezes his shoulder, still wearing that fond smile. Your parents met with the faculty, remember? Your mother cornered me, afterwards. She explained it all to me. Katsuki raises his eyebrows, and All Might nods in response to the question he hasn't asked. She told me that you might have a hard time being around me, because of Midoriya. Maybe he should have put that together when Aizawa mentioned meeting with his parents. But Katsuki never thought they would think to talk to All Might about this. He rubs at the back of his neck, averting his eyes. Sorry. For being such a D-dash. All Might shakes his head. Not necessary, my boy. It's all right. Damn it. Why is everyone being so nice about all this? Everybody's being real fucking casual about this, he grumbles, before he can stop himself. Just forgiving me right away for being in but for a year and a half, when I haven't earned that. All Might frowns at him. Bakugo, you don't have to earn anything. You lost your best friend at a young age. Heroes aren't really strangers to loss, and a loss like that at your age, that changes you. Your friends, family, teachers, we all know that. Everybody reacts to loss differently. No one's going to hold it against you. Katsuki grimaces. Yeah, well, he says, trying to hide how red his face is. Just figured I'd say sorry. Don't worry about it, All Might says, smiling again. When this is all over and we find young Midoriya, he can pick my brain himself. I'd really like to get to know him. Don't sign up for that until you meet him, Katsuki says, laughing despite himself as he bends back over the camera footage he was scrolling through. If you let Deku start asking you questions, he'll never stop. All Might takes his seat at the other end of the table, the two of them going back to work in silence. Katsuki's stomach churns, but he at least feels a little better knowing that the old man doesn't hate him too much for acting like a JRK. Maybe once this is all over he can finally start acting somewhat normal around him. The day drags on, long and grueling, and spent trying to find any hint of where Deku could be until Katsuki is ready to collapse. As the day turns to dusk and he makes his way back to UA with disappointment lodged inside his chest, he glances up at the sun setting over the horizon. "Where the f are you, Deku?" he mutters, as if somehow the wind will whisper the answer into his ear. 3 days later, they finally catch a break. Katsuki is slumped in a chair in the middle of Nightai's command post, reading through arrest reports of captured Hasaikai members and looking for links between them while Tsukachi does the same next to him. He never really liked the man much, but he's been working even harder than Katsuki has to track Deku down. It makes Katsuki appreciate him more, despite the fact that he has complicated feelings about law enforcement after they failed the first time around. Katsuki is halfway through reading about a man who can shoot a laser beam from his fingertip when Night Eye comes into the room's central phone line. "Tsukachi, Bakugo, I think we found something." Katsuki tenses before springing forward and rushing over to the phone. "What is it?" "We may have identified the location where they're holding Midoriya. I'm calling Ryukyu and Fat Gum's teams as we speak. We'll meet at the agency in 2 hours." Katsuki's heartbeat suddenly speeds up drastically, but somehow he manages to grumble out an affirmative. He can't entirely believe that he really heard what he just did. For a while, it really looked like they weren't going to find anything, and now. Katsuki swallows, running a shaky hand through his hair and texting Ida and Kirishima. Shitty Hair probably already knows, but Glasses is supervising a training session with the members of the class that aren't in the field, and they should probably be in the loop too. The next 2 hours drag on endlessly, as Katsuki tries and fails to get any meaningful information out of Night Eye when they return. So he stubbornly waits, angry and hopeful and mildly terrified as the other heroes report back. But finally, Night Eye convenes everyone in one of the spare conference rooms, and Katsuki is surrounded by Tsukachi, All Might, Ryukyu, Fat Gum, Lemillion and Sun Eater. Rock Lock, Nijire, and Gang Orca are responding to other incidents, and those present promise to brief them afterwards. After a few minutes, Katsuki starts getting impatient. "Well, you said you had a lead on Deku," he says, folding his arms across his chest and trying to hide how nervous he is. "This might be the only fucking shot we have." Night Eye nods. Lemillion and I were stationed near one of the Hasaikai properties a few districts over from here, and happened upon one of their operatives entering a store not far from the premises. I used foresight to track his movements. Katsuki nods. He remembers All Might mentioning Nightai's quirk. It's useful and kind of freaky, but he doesn't really know much about how it works. "What did you see?" Fat Gum asks. Maybe it's Katsuki's imagination, but it seems as if Night Eye is looking directly at him when he responds. "My quirk shows him entering the facility, then encountering another Hasaikai member who asks him to bring the green kid upstairs. The boss needs him for something. A few hours later." Katsuki stops moving. He stops thinking. Hell, he stops breathing. "He's there," he whispers. Night Eye nods. His behavior at the store seems to confirm it. He was purchasing clothing of a size attributable to a teenage boy. It would seem that the Hasaikai sent him on a supply run. Katsuki can feel his hands trembling as his arms fall from across his chest. This whole time, a nagging voice in the back of his head kept wondering whether all this was really real, whether they were really going to pull this off, but now. "He's really there. We really found him," he says, still in a daze. Sure, at the end of the day, it wasn't Katsuki who found him, but he's much too happy to really care about that right now. Sun Eater gives him a bright smile, as does Ryukyu. "What's our plan to get him out?" Lemillion asks from the other side of the room. Tsukachi pulls out his phone. "I'll see about securing a search warrant. Shouldn't take long, given what we know. 2 days tops." Night Eye nods. Ryukyu hums thoughtfully. It'll take that long to get everyone assembled and prepped for a raid at any rate. Katsuki's breath hitches, and he can feel his heartbeat getting faster. You mean? Every eye in the room seems to turn towards him then, but it's Fat Gum who answers. He smiles, his hands curling into fists in front of him. We're going in with everything we've got. We're getting your friend out of there, safe and sound. The words are echoed by firm nods from everyone in the room. Katsuki's knees are weak suddenly. He can't process much of anything besides the fact that they finally found him. He's finally going to get the nerd back. After over a year of thinking he was gone forever. He's gone through the same song and dance over and over, repeating those words so many times over the past few weeks, but he keeps getting stuck on that sense of surprise. He's silent for a long moment, fully aware that most of the room is still staring at him. They all know about his history with Deku by now, and it's a little weird to be the focus of all those stares. But the bigger part of him is suddenly overwhelmed with emotions again. Thank you, he whispers after a long moment, his voice laced with awed disbelief. He doesn't know where it came from, why those words spilled from his lips suddenly, but he just feels like they need to be said. He lets out a shaky sigh, hanging his head. Just, thank you. All Might steps up, appearing behind him out of nowhere and resting a hand on his shoulder. You don't have to thank us, young Bakugo. Night Eye gives him an uncharacteristically fond smile. We're all heroes here, yourself included. Saving people is what we do. And you put just as much work into this operation as anyone else. More so, even. Katsuki swallows, swiping at his suddenly watery eyes. His mind is already racing, thinking about strategies and tactics and whatever the F else they're gonna need to do to get Deku out of there in one piece. He wants nothing more than to kick the demon door in right now, but he knows they can't. Deku's life could be at stake if Katsuki acts like a reckless little sheet right now. So, he listens to Night Eye and the other heroes talk strategy, jumping in when necessary. But really, the larger part of him is consumed by memories, by thoughts of Deku and their friendship and the possibility of finally having that back. Hang on a little longer, idiot. We're coming for ya. Katsuki only hopes it's not too late. The front door of the building looms in front of them, silhouetted against the sunshine like a looming, imposing monster. But really, maybe that's what it is. Because instead of an average-looking residence like so many others in this immediate area, this place may as well be a DMN fortress. From the outside, it looks like any other building in this neighborhood, if a lot bigger. To the random passers-by, it probably seems like a wealthy family lives here. But the trained eye can see that the building is heavily fortified, from the larger, heavier metal door in. The entranceway to the large steel fence that surrounds the complex. There are small cameras covering the exterior of the building that most people wouldn't spot, as well as control panels for what Katsuki suspects is a state-of-the-art defense system for the interior. The cameras are all pointed directly at the large crowd of police and heroes that are gathered outside of the building. They fucking know we're here. His hands crackle with a few sparks, his heart pounding against his chest as he waits for Tsukachi to give them the go-ahead to serve the warrant. He's been waiting for this moment for so effing long now, and it's finally here. He's so ready and so terrified, all at the same time. He shares a look with shitty hair as Tsukachi gives the order to storm the building, and out of the corner of his eye he sees Aizawa, Fat Gum, and Lemillion nod his way. Kirishima smiles that determined, optimistic grin of his, raising one fist in the air in a motion that's probably meant to soothe both of their nerves. Katsuki somehow manages to grin back, even with the adrenaline pumping through his veins. He's still not as keyed up for this as he is for most other fights. This is serious. This is personal. This needs to go well. He barely hears it as they get the go-ahead, barely feels his legs moving as he sprints forward alongside Night Eye and the other heroes. His thoughts are a mix of battle tactics and combat techniques and Deku as they make their way inside. When the class arrives at the appointed meeting spot, Aizawa pulls all of them aside. He gives the class a once-over for a moment, and Katsuki is suddenly terrified that he's going to change his mind and say that they have to sit this one out. He's already baring his teeth like an angry dog, ready to fight like hell if the pros even think about making him sit on the sidelines, when Aizawa gives them all a serious look. The majority of you will be assisting with perimeter control, keeping civilians away from the immediate area and containing any villains who attempt to escape. The rest of you will be on the offensive team, entering the building and helping the pros and police to capture the Hasaikai members. You've all been trained for this, and you've all had ample experience working alongside pros by now. Bring your best. Yes, sir, they say in unison. But before he lets them go, Aizawa gives them another meaningful look. Try and keep yourselves out of danger. I'll be going in with you, but stick close to your mentors and keep yourselves safe. When the class breaks off, each of them taking their respective positions and gearing up for a fight, Aizawa pulls Katsuki aside. I know you're not going to listen to a word I just said, he says, his voice pitched low and his eyes meeting Katsuki's with a meaningful look. But be careful, Bakugo. The missions that get personal are always the hardest. Katsuki glares at him. I can handle myself. Aizawa shakes his head. I know. You can. Just don't lose your head, you hear me? He swallows, stealing his resolve and nodding. Very few people can get between Katsuki and his goals, when he's really serious about something, and Aizawa knows it. He seems satisfied with Katsuki's answer, bumping his fist against Katsuki's chest lightly before walking away to discuss the plan with Night Eye once again. Now or never, Dynamite, he thinks. Predictably, all hell breaks loose the moment they storm the building. They really should have known better than to think this was all going to go smoothly, or that the Hasaikai would come quietly when the police and heroes showed up at their door. Instead, once Tsukachi serves the warrant and the heroes breach the door, they're accosted by a large, brawny man in a plague doctor mask that comes barreling into the courtyard and straight into Ryukyu. Katsuki thinks it might be one of the Hasaikai's so-called 8 bullets. But he barely has time to glance over his shoulder to catch what's going on, because the man's partner pulls a gun and aims it straight at Sunny head. Night Eye is faster, though, throwing a small object at the man's head and knocking him out in an instant. Katsuki raises an eyebrow. Whatever those things are, they really pack a punch. Aizawa wraps the unconscious man up in his capture weapon, launching him towards where a few of the police officers are waiting with restraints as Ryukyu wrestles with the larger villain. Night Eye JRKS his head. Leave these few to Ryukyu and the others guarding the perimeter, he says. The rest of you inside now. Remember what we came here for. Katsuki's fired up now, itching for a fight, but he sprints forward, keeping pace with Night Eye, Kirishima, Fat Gum Lemillion, Gang Orca, Sun Eater, and all the other pros pouring inside the building. It's chaos already, as the group of heroes rush past the initial foyer, down a hallway that's so narrow it can barely fit all of them. What's the fucking plan, for eyes? Katsuki yells, skidding forwards on his knees to avoid a gunshot to the head and firing a blast at the approaching villain in the process. Your friend is somewhere in the lower levels of the building, Night Eye says, coming to a stop a few moments later in front of a seemingly innocuous wall decoration. The others will handle the villains in the courtyard, while he studies the desk in front of the wall for a moment, and Katsuki is just about to ask him whether he's lost his DMN mind when he presses on a hidden panel in the wall. Got it, Night Eye mutters, and Katsuki can't help but be impressed as a hidden door inside the wall slides open. All right. Kirishima, standing next to him, sticks his fist in the air before checking the surrounding hallways for pursuers. They knew we were coming, Katsuki thinks, as they enter the passageway and make their way down some surprisingly narrow stairs. They're too well coordinated for it to be anything else. The surprise attack at the front, keeping most of their supporting forces occupied while the leaders have the chance to escape, potentially with Deku in tow. Katsuki swallows, suddenly nervous all over again that this is only going to end in disaster. Aizawa materializes next to him as they emerge into a much larger hallway lined with concrete walls. Katsuki didn't even see him until now, but he's always been good at sneaking up on people. You're thinking this was all too well planned, Aizawa says as the group takes off running down the hallway. Definitely seems like they were ready for us, Fat Gum adds. Night Eye nods. They clearly have an informant or two that warned them about the raid, but they don't have much of a head start on us. Just stay focused. Like it's even possible for Katsuki to focus on anything else. This weird concrete bunker is all that's standing in between him and Deku, and he's not about to let that get in his way no matter what the Hasaikai decide to throw at them. The large concrete walls loom high above them as they keep moving forward, until Katsuki is breathing hard and the sweat is dripping down his back. They haven't met too much resistance yet, confirming Katsuki's suspicions. The bulk of their forces are likely upstairs, keeping most of the heroes contained. They can hear the fighting upstairs, the loud booms and shouting and the crackling sounds probably coming from Kaminari's lightning echoing down here. Their first surprise comes in the form of 3 hooded figures, appearing from nowhere in the dark space and evidently intending to take the heroes by surprise. Katsuki jolts when he sees them, but before he can cry out, he sees a tentacle whiz past his right arm and wrap around all 3 of them. Sun Eater moves to Katsuki's left, pulling the villains towards him and whacking all 3 of them on the head with a huge clam that's now formed where his hand used to be. Well, Diamen. He's never actually seen the big 3 in action before, but he should have known they'd be pretty DM and good. Amajiki's always been so quiet that Katsuki wouldn't have expected that from him. Fat Gum claps Amajiki on the back, but before they can start moving again, Katsuki feels the floor rumble underneath their feet. What the? They barely have time to react, as the walls start moving, jerking and rumbling before a large barrier emerges from the spot where Katsuki was just standing. It's loud and fast, a wall of concrete sprouting up from the floor to cut off their attempts to move forward. Katsuki cries out, launching himself sideways a second later and grabbing Kirishima's arm for good measure to take him with him. It's over in a single moment, and when the movement dies down, Katsuki turns his head to see a new wall has trapped them here. He brushes the dust off of his knees, getting up from where he had landed on the floor. He turns his head to see Kirishima doing the same, both of them appearing uninjured. But they're also alone with nothing but a dark hallway looming in front of them. Katsuki pounds on the wall behind them, where the others are hopefully still standing. "Hey," he yells. "Are you extras good? Fat? Sun Eater? Sensei? You guys okay?" Kirishima rolls his shoulder, shooting a worried glance at Katsuki. He can hear muted groans coming from the other side of the wall. "We're fine," comes Aizawa's voice, the words tense and gruff. "Are you too injured?" Katsuki shakes his head, before remembering that the others can't see him. "Nah," he says, lifting his arms in front of him. "Stand back, I'll blast a hole through this thing." "No." It's Night Eye's voice, this time. "The walls are still moving back here. Until we figure out what's going on, we can't risk you setting off larger explosions and accidentally burying us all down here." Katsuki grits his teeth, but he can't deny the logic. Still, he's worried now, as little as he wants to admit it. "Things are clear on this end," Kirishima says, his expression thoughtful. There's silence for a moment, as Katsuki contemplates what to do. How the hell are they supposed to get everyone else out from the other side of this FING barrier? How are they supposed to keep going with just the 2 of them? Gah! Katsuki jumps as Lemillion steps casually through the concrete wall as if it wasn't even there. Permeation. "Hi guys," he says, waving at them brightly. "Bakugo." Kirishima, Aizawa says, sounding as if he's standing closer now. "If things are clear on your end, then keep moving. Lemillion will go with you, and the rest of us will find another way around. The villains are trying to split us up, distract us so we give them time to escape. If they're trying to split us up, it's fucking working," Katsuki grumbles. "You all have your communicators," Night Eye says, and Katsuki tenses. He forgot about it until right at this moment. "In the event that we lose contact, we'll meet back up at the surface." Night Eye keeps talking, yelling out the path that Katsuki and the others should take as Katsuki listens intently, committing the information to memory. "Find Midoriya, Bakugo. The rest of us will catch up. You can do this." It's Aizawa's voice again, softer this time. "Good luck." But Kirishima sounds unsure, but Katsuki can feel the ground rumbling beneath his feet again. He's not sure what's going on the other side of the wall, but from the way the others' voices are getting louder, it can't be good. and it's only a matter of time before the weird moving walls start spreading to this side of the barrier. Go! Aizawa yells. Get to your friend and be careful. Their leader is still around somewhere, so until we catch him, be on your guard. Kirishima, keep an eye on the problem child for me. Katsuki grumbles, but Shitty Hair smiles brightly. Got it, sir. Lemillion, keep them safe. Night Eye again. Mirio clenches his fist, nodding earnestly before jerking his head at Katsuki. He takes one last look back at the wall before sprinting forward again, running down the hallway at a breakneck pace. They've gone a ways further with little resistance when Mirio turns to Katsuki. Sir is really proud of you, you know? Katsuki can't hide his surprise. He's still focused on getting to Deku above all else, and for some reason the small statement pulls at something. The closer they get to, hopefully, finding Izuku, the weirder his emotions feel. The hell? Is this really the time, Ghost Boy? Lemillion shrugs. Just thought you should know. He can be a stick in the mud sometimes, but he's really rooting for you to pull this off. We all are. Something churns in Katsuki's stomach as they jog further into the underground complex. This place is a demon maze, and Katsuki has no idea how far they've come so far, but something in his gut tells him that they're going the right way. Katsuki opens his mouth to say something else, when Mirio shoves him forwards, sending him stumbling out of the way of some sort of projectile that hits the ground behind him. Two men are standing in front of them, one hanging from the ceiling and one standing directly in their path, seemingly unbothered by their presence. Katsuki jolts when he recognizes them, two more members of the 8 Bullets, but Katsuki is too focused on how to bring them down to worry about their names at the moment. Well, the one on the ground says, as the one hanging from the ceiling cackles. I expected more than this. Ha! Katsuki yells, moving into a fighting stance. The F, is that supposed to mean? Kirishima hardens his skin, bracing for a fight. They're trying to distract us, man. Katsuki reaches for one of the grenades hanging from his belt. Just because he knows large explosions are dangerous underground doesn't mean that he's completely defenseless. But instead Lemillion charges forward, phasing his body so that a bullet goes straight through his stomach. Geez, that's gotta be jarring. Before throwing something that looks like one of Nightie's support items at the man hanging from the ceiling. He misses, but a moment later Katsuki realizes that he was aiming for the pipe that the man is hanging from instead of the man himself. The pipe bends, the villain losing his grip and falling to the floor. Lucky enough for them, he lands right on top of his companion, the both of them landing in a heap and giving them a small window of opportunity. They're already getting back up, and Katsuki leans back to toss the grenade in his hand when Mirio shoves him forward again. I can keep these two busy. You two go. Find Midoriya. Katsuki opens his mouth to protest. This keeps FING happening. They're getting picked off one by one and split up from one formidable group into small isolated pockets. So far he's escaped any real fighting, but just from running down this never-ending FNG hallway, he can feel his muscles aching and his breathing coming in short pants. The fear is kicking in now, the worry that it's just going to be the two of them and they're never going to find Deku and all this shit is going to be for nothing. Bakugo! Go! I'll buy you time. Kirishima tugs on his arm, and Katsuki swallows down the lump in his throat. Everybody's fucking buying him time, stalling the villains so that he can do what they came here to do. It's all suddenly overwhelming, but he can't lose it now. Not in the middle of the fight, when he needs to keep his wits about him and act like a DMN hero instead of a scared kid. He takes one last look at Mirio, who's already turning towards the villains and trying his best to keep them occupied. Katsuki looks down at the grenade in his hand, reaching to pull two more off his belt. Take these. They're not that strong, but they pack a punch. Regroup with the others when you can. We're gonna need a fucking exit strategy after all this. Mirio smiles, running forward to catch the grenades and putting a body in between Katsuki and Kirishima and the villains in the process. He's a good guy. Katsuki really FING hopes that his stupid rescue mission isn't about to get him and the others all killed. But he doesn't have too much time to dwell on it. Kirishima is calling his name, urging him to move, and Katsuki sprints down the hallway again. He feels a bit like a rat trapped in a maze, running from room to room only for Deku to remain stubbornly out of his reach. What the F were they thinking doing this? They should have tried something else, should have gotten more pros to help, should have picked the Hasaikai off one by one until. Stop it, Shitty Hair says, snapping him out of his thoughts. He's a little bit in front of Katsuki, but even from behind him Katsuki can picture the look on his face. I can practically feel you thinking too much. We've got this. The others knew what they were getting into. Katsuki swallows, shaking his head as if that will somehow chase away his racing thoughts. I know, he says, stopping to catch his breath for a second. It's just. Before he can finish that sentence, he feels something collide with his side, knocking him on his but as Kirishima calls his name. Katsuki recovers quickly, rolling over where he landed on the floor and rising smoothly to one knee. One arm comes up to hold his bruised shoulder, and he looks up to see that the thing that collided with him is apparently a person, a small Hasaikai member wearing their signature plague mask and twirling a knife between his fingers. The F is with you BS's and sneaking up on people, Katsuki mutters, as the villain cackles in front of them. Shitty Hair pulls him to his feet, and Katsuki experimentally rolls his shoulder. Nothing broken or dislocated from the feel of it. The man in the plague mask Katsuki didn't bother to learn the names of these extras beyond the 8 bullets, of which this guy is clearly not one. Sneers at the two of them. Only 2 of you managed to get through, he says, still laughing. And a couple kids at that. His voice is nasally, and it grates on Katsuki's nerves dangerously. Katsuki rolls his eyes, charging forward before the man can get another word in edgewise. He's suitably warmed up by now, on edge and set off and ready for Chisaki's effing henchmen to stop getting in his demon way. Surprisingly, the villain lets Katsuki get in close, seemingly uncaring for what he's going to do and not moving to get away. When Katsuki's only a few feet away from the man he strikes, letting out a small blast aimed directly at the villain's face. He ducks, as Katsuki expected, sending him moving directly towards Katsuki's outstretched fist. It connects a moment later, a strong right hook to the face, and before the villain can recover, Kirishima grabs the man's other arm and vaults him overhead and onto the floor. He hits the ground with a loud smack, and Katsuki makes eye contact with Shitty Hair as the man rolls over and springs back up like it was nothing. The two of them have been in so many fights together over the years that they're practically a well-oiled machine by now. There's little need for communication by now. Kirishima is so in tune with Katsuki's movements and his fighting style that they always seem to fall into step nicely. The level of synchronicity Katsuki has with Kirishima when they fight has come the closest out of anyone to mimicking his relationship with Deku. So, maybe it's fitting that Kirishima is here now, when he's finally on the cusp of finding the nerd again. The two of them charge at the villain together, not giving him a moment to breathe before they're both on top of him. Shitty Hair knocks his weapon away with an open-handed strike to the forearm, and Katsuki follows up with a left cross to the stomach. Katsuki and Kirishima fall into step seamlessly, aiming punch after punch as the man stubbornly evades more than a few of them. But eventually he manages to land a couple hits of his own, and Katsuki takes a fist to the stomach that is much more powerful than it has any right to be. Strength-enhancing quirk? The villain takes advantage of his momentary daze, pulling a knife from nowhere and slashing Katsuki's arm a slice right up the side of his tricep. Katsuki cries out, "It's not that deep, but it stings like hell," and he shakes his head as if to banish the pain. But before he really has time to dwell on it, he and Kirishima are both knocked backwards, as the villain grabs Shitty Hair's arm and sends him barreling right into Katsuki's body. He gets up quickly, looking around and trying to figure out where this little sheet disappeared to when he hears that laughter again, coming from behind him, this time. Katsuki whirls, stretching his arm forwards and preparing to fire an AP shot. But before he can shoot, something gray and familiar whizzes through the air, wrapping the villain in a tight hold before pulling him backwards hard, sending him careening into the opposite wall. Katsuki blinks, turning around and expecting to see Aizawa-sensei there, but instead, mindfuck? The hell are you doing here? How did you even get here? Shinso is breathing hard, retracting the capture weapon as he straightens up to look at Katsuki. He's sporting a black eye, and it looks like he's bleeding from a shallow cut on his left forearm, but he's otherwise alright. He was supposed to be with the extras up top. Why is he? Did you run all the way down here, man? Kirishima pipes up. Is everyone else okay? Did you see the others? Shinso nods, still catching his breath as he taps one finger against the side of his voice changer. Don't know, didn't see anyone else. But the quickest way to get directions is to ask, remember? He says in between pants. You idiots need me more than they do. Won't see me grumbling about it, Katsuki says, smirking as he glances towards where the villain has started to get up again. Just try and keep up. It's a meaningless jab. Katsuki already knows that Shinso can hold his own with the best of them. But he can see Hitoshi smirking even behind that voice changer. His eyes give him away. It gives Katsuki a tiny boost in energy that makes him feel just that much more confident that they can pull this off after all. The three of them turn back towards the villain as he grunts, standing upright and stalking towards them with murderous intent. Katsuki gets ready to fire again, but before he can let off a blast, a bullet whizzes past his head, bouncing harmlessly off of Shitty Hair's forearm and ricocheting into the wall. Careful! Kirishima yells, bracing his arms protectively in front of his face. Katsuki fires off a blast towards the opposite wall. He misses, and the man laughs like he knows it, but Katsuki wasn't going for a direct hit this time. Instead, the smoke from the blast fills the space between them and the villain, putting up a smoke screen for a few moments. It's all the opportunity Shinso needs, and he twirls the dial on his voice changer. Behind you, he yells, mimicking the voice of some extra Katsuki doesn't know. It seems to work, though, because as the smoke clears, he sees the man swiveling around to glance behind him with a startled look on his face. What? His jaw goes slack a second later, and Katsuki smirks wildly. He's always liked Shinso. He's got a no-nonsense attitude that Katsuki respects, and his sass actually manages to make Katsuki laugh more than once, even when Katsuki doesn't want to admit it. Whose voice was that? Kirishima asks, relaxing his hardening now that they're out of immediate danger for the moment. Mindfuck just shrugs, brushing the dust and some small debris from the blast off of his legs. Someone I ran into on the way here. Seemed like a mid-level guy. The three of them walk up to the now stationary villain, standing at attention and ready for Shinso to tell him what to do. Shinso gives the man a hard, angry look. Tell us where to go to find the kid. The man barely blinks before lifting his arm. One's all the way down that far hallway and under the main compound, he says, and Katsuki feels a little lightheaded. They still have a ways to go, but they're so close. He can practically see Deku standing in front of him. He turns around, already moving in the direction the man is pointing. But then, the other one's back towards the way you came, about 2 floors up. Katsuki freezes. His whole body goes rigid, every muscle clamping up as the words wash over him. He turns back around slowly, and as he does, he sees the same startled expressions on Shinso and Kirishima's faces. There's more than one kid here? Katsuki's eyes widen. If there's really a second kid here, that complicates things immensely. He's already advancing on the villain, grabbing him by the collar and holding one gauntlet hand directly in front of his face. Never mind that the guy is brainwashed into oblivion and probably doesn't even register it. Katsuki doesn't care. He's suddenly mad, furious, and terrified that somebody decided to throw a wrench into their plans. Kirishima rests a hand on his shoulder. Take it easy, man. Midoriya's here. We're going to find him. His voice brings Katsuki a little closer to earth, but he's still having some trouble breathing. He came here for Deku, but if there's really a second kid captive here, they need to get them out too. Deku would never forgive him if he knew they left someone behind. After a moment, Katsuki manages to take a deep breath, looking up at Shinso and away from the villain. Make this idiot tell me the truth, he says, his voice low and icy. The villain has evidently recovered by now, and he laughs in Katsuki's face, seemingly unbothered by the threatening fist an inch from his head. I'm not telling you anything, he says, laughing. Shinso is quick on the draw, though, fiddling with the dial on his mask. Shut the F up, you beach butt extra, he yells in Katsuki's voice. Make me. The man's jaw goes slack again, and Katsuki turns towards Shinso, momentarily distracted. I do not sound like that, Yubi, Katsuki says, glaring at him. Shinso shrugs. You absolutely do. It's part of your charm. Katsuki laughs, loud and piercing and echoing through the room. Yeah, it's a serious moment and they're stuck somewhere underground in the lair of a formidable opponent, but his heart is beating really fing fast, and he really needed to laugh. The small reprieve releases a minuscule amount of the tension in his body. So, what do we do? Kirishima asks, his expression thoughtful. We've got to let the others know what's going on, right? Shinso shakes his head. Bakugo's got the right idea. We need to know what we're dealing with first. He turns back to the motionless villain. Answer his next 5 questions truthfully, he says, breathing slightly erratic. Katsuki knows it takes a lot of energy for Shinso to command someone to talk, but he had no idea he stretched his limit to 5 questions. If the situation were different, he would have time to be impressed. Where is the kid with green hair? The boy. The villain points in the direction they came from. 2 floors up. So the other one must be further down. But that means... And the other kid? Who are they? Little girl. Powerful one, he says. Boss little experiment. That one makes Katsuki's skin crawl, but it's progress. 3 more questions. Which of them is more heavily guarded? Boss took the girl with him, and he's not one you want to mess with. The boy's stuck behind 6 layers of reinforced steel, but he's not going anywhere, so we don't bother keeping too heavy a watch on him. A pit opens up in Katsuki's stomach, because that statement implies something that he really doesn't like. He knows he shouldn't, but he can't resist asking. What the hell do you mean he isn't going anywhere? What the f did they do to him? Bakugo! Answer me, fuckhead. He knows his voice is growing frantic, but he doesn't care if Deku is hurt or worse. Boss used to keep him drugged in case he tried anything. Still does, sometimes, but Shisaki told him he'd kill the girl if he tried runnin', and the kid was dumb enough to believe it, so he sticks around. Katsuki makes a noise that sounds like a punched-out wheeze. Of FING course. That's probably the most Deku thing he's ever heard, to sacrifice himself like an idiot if it meant keeping someone else safe. But his blood starts boiling again at the mention of them drugging Deku into SBing. He takes a shaky breath, clenching and unclenching his fists. He can't think about that right now. Finish the DMN mission. There'll be time later to process whatever the F his body is doing right now. He knew it was going to be ugly, but... Katsuki! It's Kirishima's voice, and Katsuki turns to see him standing close by. You okay? Katsuki lets out another breath. He's still got 1 more question left. What's the quickest way to the spot where you're keeping the boy? He asks, his voice low and monotone. He feels torn in two. The girl needs the strongest fighters if she's really stuck with their leader. But Deku needs him. What are you? The villain gives him the directions quickly, cutting off Shinso's question, and Katsuki repeats it over in his head. Thanks, he mutters, before firing off a stun grenade and knocking the man out with a single punch. It helps to release some of the frustration he's feeling. All right, new plan, he says, running a hand through his hair that definitely does not shake. God damn it. Katsuki. Kirishima's voice sounds gentle, comforting, but Katsuki shrugs it off. He needs to be dynamite right now. He taps the communicator on his ear. Hey, Four Eyes. Aizawa-sensei. Anybody. You read me? For a moment, he's worried that no one will respond, that something terrible has happened and they'll be trapped down here alone. But then, I read you, Bakugo. Are you all right? Katsuki swallows at the sound of Night Eye's voice. He's breathing hard, like he's just come out of a fight, but Katsuki doesn't have time to dwell on whether he or the other heroes are all right. He doesn't know if the other pros are listening, but if he can let Night Eye know, he'll tell the rest. Got a problem, he mutters. There's 2 kids trapped here. He gives Night Eye the cliff notes from the villain's information, holding his breath in the agonizing pause that follows. He can almost see Night Eye turning the new intel over in his brain, figuring out what to do. Katsuki has no idea what's going on up there, but he can hear what sounds like fighting muffled thumps and voices followed by loud crashes and bangs coming through the communicator. From the worried look Kirishima shares with Shinso, they must hear it too. This complicates things, Night Eye mutters before his voice hardens. Keep going. Get to Midoriya and get him out of there. The rest of us will handle finding the girl. If she's with Chisaki, that's where most of our resources will need to concentrate. Our priority is capturing him and saving the kids. We'll get her out of here, Lemillion chimes in. Katsuki releases the breath he was holding. Apparently most of them are still in one piece. Aizawa's voice comes through next. I'm on my way to you. May take me a while to get there, but I'll bring whatever reinforcements I can. Katsuki nods, before remembering that he's stuck underground away from the rest of the group and they can't see him. Got it. Be careful down there, is all Aizawa says, before Katsuki hears a loud cry coming from somewhere in the background and the line goes dead. He has no idea what the hell they're facing up there, but whatever it is, it can't be good. Shinso and Kirishima are watching him, evidently waiting for him to make the first move. As much as he hates it, he's always been one of the natural leaders of the class, and right now it feels more uncomfortable than anything else. He turns to Shinso, meeting his eyes. The others are going to need him more than Katsuki will. Whatever you did to get here so quick, do it again, Katsuki says. Go back and find whoever you can. Help them contain this sheet. Aizawa's bringing backup, for Aiz and the pros are going to need you. Shinso PPS his head, removing the voice changer so that Katsuki can see him frowning. Are you sure? Are you two going to be okay on your own? Katsuki glances at Kirishima, his usual wild smile spreading across his face. Shitty Hair is wearing a similar grin. This is the kind of sheet they're used to, fighting together against shitty odds. We'll be fine. We shouldn't run into too much trouble, 1 or 2 villains at most. And once Sensei gets here, it'll be a cakewalk. Shinso, go, Kirishima says, when Mindfuck still looks unsure. We've got this. It'll be fine. See you on the other side, yeah? Shinso deliberates for a few moments, before his brow furrows into a determined expression. Don't die. It'll be dull without you two around. And I'm dying to meet Midoriya after all this is over, so I really hope you find him. Katsuki blinks. That might be the nicest thing Shinso has ever said to him. After Shinso turns and starts jogging back the way he came, Katsuki's gaze hardens, his smirk slipping into something more serious. Deku's close, potentially injured, and Katsuki doesn't care what the F gets in his way. He's not waiting anymore. Come on, he says, jerking his head forward. He starts sprinting forwards at a breakneck pace, taking the opposite path to Shinso when they come to a fork in the hallway. He can practically feel Shitty Hair worrying next to him as they make their way towards the location provided by the villain, but he can't bring himself to talk. It's like some kind of energy is thrumming through his whole body, something getting stronger and stronger the closer he gets to Deku. It's like his body and his mind just know Izuku is close by, like the closer he gets the more he can feel some invisible thread connecting them together like something out of a DMN myth. It's the first time he's felt that sensation since Deku died. Katsuki moves a little bit faster once that thought crosses his mind. He has no idea how long he and Kirishima have been running, but after a while they find themselves in a long hallway, and Katsuki can see a large metal door at the end of it. Deku is behind that door. He's breathing hard, the cut on his arm is throbbing painfully, and he's already exhausted despite being mostly unscathed as of yet. But Deku is behind that FANG door. Katsuki lets out a breathy laugh, sprinting forward with Kirishima following closely on his heels. But before he can make it to the end of the hallway and open said door, Katsuki sees a figure step out of the shadows, wearing the signature Hasaikai plague mask and holding 2 large whips. So much for Deku not being guarded, he thinks, his fury rising. A second glance reveals that they're not whips. They appear to be attached to the villain's hands and made up of tiny blades, and Katsuki launches himself into the air when the villain propels it forwards. Kirishima hardens his skin, so the whip bounces right off him, but a moment later, Katsuki cries out as a sharp pain laces up his right leg. He swivels in midair, using an explosion to do it, and he's startled to see a second villain with a similar knife whip. Must be their quirks. Katsuki lands on the ground, yelling again as his injured leg buckles under the weight. It's deeper than the cut on his arm, but Katsuki doesn't have time to dwell on it, even though it makes it FNG hard to move now. He doesn't care about the risk of collapsing the hallway anymore. He doesn't care that explosions are dangerous underground, or that he's supposed to be restraining himself. Deku is only a few feet away from him, and these fuckers are in Katsuki's way. Die, he yells, abandoning any and all restraint. His leg protests as he bends backwards to avoid a whip that flies past his shoulder, but one large blast from his right hand has the villain flying backwards, landing on their butt. The voice that cries out is feminine, but Katsuki doesn't let up, firing off an AP shot directly at the whip and actually breaking a piece of it. The woman shouts again. Katsuki realizes that the whips must be attached to her. Her friends must be too. This one is down for the count for now, so Katsuki moves back to where Shitty Hair is fighting, whips bouncing off his hardened skin but nicking tiny cuts in the process. He can see Kirishima gritting his teeth, stubbornly refusing to cry out as his hardening starts to fail and the small blades pierce him over and over again. He's not too far away, but the pain in Katsuki's leg gets harder to manage as he starts limping forward. Katsuki makes a noise that's almost a growl, but before he can make his stubborn, injured leg move to get in closer, he feels a rush of cold whoosh past him. A moment later, a large block of ice erupts in front of them both, caging in the woman, attacking Kirishima and freezing her whole body. Katsuki turns around, admittedly with some effort, to see Icy Hot standing behind them with his arm outstretched. There's a shallow cut across one of his cheeks, and the left side of his body is covered in frost, like he's overused his ice a bit. He's panting, breathing hard, but he looks like he's okay, otherwise. Katsuki should have expected that. Todoroki has always been one of the strongest in the class. The hell are you doing here, Icy Hot? Where the F is Sensei? Todoroki shakes his head, running towards them and looking worried. The ice is already starting to crack a bit. They only have a few moments. He and Kaminari were attacked by one of the 8 bullets. We got separated. I sent Shinso along to help and informed the others. Katsuki groans as his leg buckles, and before he can yell something about not needing help, Todoroki's arm reaches out to steady him. Bakugo, are you? I'm fine, he groans, knocking Icy Hot's arm away. He glances down to see blood soaking the leg of his costume, still oozing from the large cut. It's not that bad, not deep enough to really be life-threatening, but it's certainly a DMN inconvenience right about now. Katsuki can see the ice cracking, see the door on the other side of the room looming further away than ever. He turns around, intending to finish what he started and blast these pieces of sheet into oblivion, but Shitty Hair and Todoroki both shake their heads. We'll keep these two busy for now, Todoroki says, jerking his head towards the end of the hallway. Midoriya is behind that door, isn't he? We can handle the villains while you get him out of there. Katsuki thinks for a moment, pushing past the pain and kicking his brain into gear. Splitting up again feels like a bad idea. Todoroki and Kirishima might need his help. These two are strong, and the more they split up, the more Katsuki worries that this might end tragically. Todoroki doesn't give him time to argue, firing a second ice wall at where the two villains are starting to get up again and trapping them temporarily. We'll catch up with you when these two are down for the count. It shouldn't take long with 2 of us here. Kirishima nods, giving Katsuki an encouraging smile. Katsuki glances between them and the door. He doesn't have a ton of time. If he's going to do this, it's gotta be fast. He sighs, fighting a wince as he swivels on his injured leg. Don't die, morons, he says, propelling himself forward with his explosions rather than walking. It's a small compromise. It takes the ache away from his leg and moves it to his arms instead. He doesn't hear Todoroki and Kirishima's response, and he doesn't look back at the fight. If he looks back, he'll turn back, and he's too damn close to finally reaching Deku to do that. He keeps his eyes on the steel door in front of him, growing closer and closer until he lands in front of it. His leg buckles as he stands, but he doesn't care, not when he can hear his heartbeat loud in his ears and feel the anticipation coiling in his veins. The door is made of solid steel, and Katsuki's anger grows when he sees that it's more of a vault than a door. Katsuki's seething with rage as he stands in front of it, bracing his hands against the locking mechanism as the sweat pools beneath his gloves. They fucking locked him up like a prize animal in a DMN circus. What the F kind of person does that shit? What did they do to him? The explosion burst from his hands with a loud bang, made so powerful and hot by the force of Katsuki's anger that it practically melts the lock. There's a hole blown through the door, and Katsuki swallows down the sudden burst of anxiety as he starts to push it open. What if Deku's not here after all? What if they fucking killed him the minute Chisaki saw them coming? What if he's so messed up that he doesn't even recognize Katsuki? What if he doesn't even want to leave? Katsuki takes a deep breath. Then too, as he inhales for the third time, he pries the door fully open and makes his way inside. The room is surprisingly bare. The walls are solid concrete, and there's nothing that can even vaguely be called a decoration. There's a small box in the corner of the room, and Katsuki can see a few articles of clothing sticking out of the top. There's a sink in the corner, along with a door that presumably, hopefully leads to a bathroom. It's more like a prison cell than anything else, and it makes something dark stir in Katsuki's gut. The thought of Deku being trapped in here this whole damn time, it makes Katsuki want to burn the whole FING place to the ground. But any thought in Katsuki's brain winks out of existence as his eyes drift to the center of the room. His whole body stiffens, his eyes widening and tears prickling at the corners. There's a small bed in the center of the room that looks uncomfortable as hell. But that's not what captures Katsuki's attention, what holds him enraptured and enthralled and oblivious to anything else around him. Because sitting on top of that bed, staring at him with wide, fearful eyes, is a face that's only been a memory for the past year and a half. His eyes look hazy, muted, like his awareness is muddled by something, as opposed to the bright, brilliant shine that Katsuki remembers so vividly. But Katsuki would recognize that tangled mess of green hair even if he forgot his own DMN name. Deku, Katsuki says, the word leaving his lips in a shaky exhale. Izuku stares at him like he's seeing a ghost, like he can't believe that Katsuki is real and he isn't sure if he's dreaming or not. Katsuki's eyes scan every inch of Izuku's body that he can see, subtly assessing the damage as his anger grows. He knows there are tears leaking from his eyes and his mouth is hanging open like a fish, but he can't do anything about it. Izuku looks a lot thinner than Katsuki remembers, the muscle mass that he gained while training for UA almost completely gone. There's a bruise underneath his left eye, and Katsuki can see a massive scar covering most of his upper arm. In fact, his arms and hands are covered in scars that he most certainly did not have when he vanished. There are even a few scattered across his legs, which are hanging off the edge of the bed and not quite touching the floor. It makes Katsuki see red all over again. Someone hurt him, and Katsuki wasn't here to stop it, and Katsuki might never forgive himself for that. Neither one of them has said anything yet. They're both just staring, silently committing the other to memory as if this is the last time they'll ever see each other. Katsuki knows they need to move, that they need to get the F out of here before Overhaul or his lackeys make an appearance again, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care about anything except Izuku, suddenly here and awake and alive and everything Katsuki thought he would never be again. Katsuki feels something painful inside his chest, some feeling that he hasn't felt since they told him Deku was gone. It's like everything inside him that died with Deku is suddenly being born again now that he's here, and Katsuki can't help the wide, genuine smile that spreads across his face. He lets out a shaky laugh, the nervous kind, like this whole thing is a mirage that's a second away from crumbling. 1,000 memories flash through Katsuki's head at once, from their early childhood to just before UA. Every time he playfully shoved Deku into a bush, every time Deku dunked his head underwater or punched him in the arm when he was being a jerk, every time they watched a movie together and every time they sat on one of their beds making plans for the future when they would be heroes together. It all led them here, to Katsuki staring at Deku in the middle of a giant bunker and thinking that he's the most beautiful goddamn thing he's ever seen. He takes one shaky step forward. Deku is still staring at him with wide eyes, his eyes watering. Katsuki's arm is outstretched, and inside his head his brain is screaming, his thoughts racing a mile a minute but most of all begging Deku to say something, idiot, say something, please let this be real. Don't let this be a FNG trap. Izuku opens his mouth, the ghost of a smile on his lips. It's a sad one, like he's thinking the same thing Katsuki is. It's like he's wondering whether Katsuki is just a dream, a memory come back to haunt him and torment him alongside whatever the Hasaikai have been doing. But before Izuku can say anything, his eyes widen even further, his expression morphing into a fearful one. Katsuki can feel something inside him jolt, his brow furrowing as his hazy, disbelieving brain tries to catch up with what's happening. He wants so desperately for Izuku to say something, but when he does speak, Katsuki feels his heart plummet to the pit of his stomach. "Watch out!" Izuku yells, and that voice washes over Katsuki like a warm bath, like a glass of ice water on a hot day or a soothing massage after a long workout. Even though that voice is panicky and fearful, it makes Katsuki smile brightly. Right before he feels the knife pierce his ribcage, sinking deep through bone and muscle and sending pain shooting through his entire body. Katsuki's ears fill with white noise. He wheezes, glancing down in surprise just in time to see someone pull the blade from his chest and stand in front of him. Katsuki reaches up to blast the villain, thoughts hazy and messy but leave Deku alone chiefest among them. He tries to fire off an explosion, he really does, but his vision starts to blur and he can feel his limbs getting weaker as he stumbles back, falling to his knees. The pain is overwhelming suddenly, and his arms and legs feel cold. Why is he cold? Why is everything so bright? Not this. Not like this. He was supposed to save Deku, get them both out of here and then spend the rest of his goddamn life never letting the nerd go. He wasn't supposed to make Deku watch him die, after everything he's already been through. He can see Izuku running towards him, his hand outstretched. Katsuki can feel his strength ebbing away, but suddenly he's not worried. Not really. Deku is here and his quirk was made for this, he remembers. Deku's never let him down a single day in his life. There's nobody he trusts more in the entire goddamn world to pull him out of this than Izuku. But it still hurts, and something clenches inside his chest when his hazy brain registers the look on Izuku's face. Katsuki's practically lying on the floor now, but Izuku looks like he's the one who's been stabbed as Katsuki coughs wetly. He can taste blood in his mouth, and his vision is starting to go black at the edges. Izuku is shouting something, glaring at the villain with tears in his eyes, and Katsuki aches. He swears, if they somehow make it out of this, he's going to work so goddamn hard to never put that look on Deku's face again. Katsuki's eyes begin to drift shut, but even as his strength fades, he struggles to focus for long enough to hear what Izuku is shouting. He wants to hear that voice again. He spent so long living without it that he wants to drink it in as much as possible. Even if this is really the end, he wants one last taste of Deku's voice to carry him through. He wants to hear that DMN's stupid nickname one more time. Just once. His vision clears for long enough to focus on Deku's face one last time, on the tears trailing down his face and the horror in his eyes. He hates making Deku cry. One gloved hand reaches out, as if to wipe the tears away, but his arm falls limply to the ground before he can. He wants to say he's sorry, that he's so happy that Deku's alive, but all that comes out is another wet cough. Say something, say it, Deku please. The last thing he sees is Izuku running towards him again, and as Katsuki's entire world fades to black, he hears one word, spoken with so much raw agony that it makes Katsuki's insides clench even as consciousness leaves him. Kaken. For as long as Izuku Midoriya can remember, Katsuki Bakugo has been his friend. Izuku can still remember the day they met, way back when they were toddlers. His mother had said something about going to her friend's house. Izuku was a shy kid, so he was a little nervous, grabbing one of his many All Might action figures to take with him. Maybe it's a cliché, but when he saw the small blonde boy standing next to his mother's friend, he just knew they were going to be friends too. He marched over to Izuku with a confident look on his tiny face that Izuku couldn't help but admire. He's so cool, he remembers thinking even back then. He'd never seen anyone look that confident other than All Might on TV. He managed to smile at the other boy, giving him a small wave. He stared back for a moment, before he said that Izuku had a cool action figure and Izuku finally felt brave enough to step away from his mother and introduce himself. They played together all the time after that. Izuku found out that the other boy's name was Katsuki, and he loved heroes just as much as Izuku did. And once they became friends, they would talk about being heroes together whenever they could. It was never in question, it wasn't a matter of if they could do it, but when they would. Katsuki always said he was going to be the number one, and Izuku would be one step behind him, at number 2. He was fine with that. He admired Katsuki so much, and if anyone deserved the number 1 spot, he did. Izuku didn't mind letting Katsuki have the top spot, as long as he got to be right next to him when it happened. Izuku doesn't know when Katsuki became Kaken, but once he did, it felt weird to call him anything else. It probably happened back when they were still babies, but ever since it did, Kaken never complained. He would sometimes roll his eyes and grumble that it was dumb as they got older and started school, but he never seriously minded. In fact, Izuku could see the way the tips of Kaken's ears turned pink when he called him that, like he thought it was cute or something. It always made Izuku smile, like Kaken was proud to be his friend. Izuku became Deku when they were 5, and once that happened, it was like the two of them had their own secret little names for each other that no one else could touch. He never minded being Deku, not when Kaken said it. When Kaken called him Deku, it felt like a mark of distinction, a badge of honor that meant the two of them were really best friends. Only best friends have nicknames for each other that no one else was allowed to use, right? Katsuki was Kaken, and Izuku was Deku, and it didn't matter what anyone else thought. Those names were theirs, and no one else's. Their quirks came at very different times, and for a while, Izuku worried that quirks would be the thing to tear them apart. Kaken's quirk came first, because of course it did. Kaken was the best at everything. It only made sense that he would be the first in the class to get a quirk, too. Izuku saw the sparks coming from Kaken's hands, and his smile spread across his whole face. His overactive 5-year-old brain was already thinking about what his quirk would grow into, how Kaken could use it to be the best hero and the best fighter ever. He talked Kaken's ear off about it, mumbling about how strong Kaken was and how amazing his quirk is. Because Kaken was his best friend. Of course his quirk was the most amazing thing ever. Izuku's quirk was much later to arrive, and there was a brief PRD where he thought that it might not show up at all. His mother tried everything she could to reassure him, but he worried so much that it wouldn't happen. He wouldn't be able to handle it if he didn't get his quirk. Kaken would be so upset. But eventually, his quirk did show up, and even though it wasn't the flashy, fighting quirk that he sometimes dreamed he would have, he was happy with it all the same. He still remembers the awestruck look on Kaken's face when he healed that bird right before his eyes. He looked so shocked for a moment, before he grinned brightly and wrapped an arm around Izuku's shoulder. There was no one else around, but it didn't stop Kaken from yelling as loudly as his 5-year-old lungs would let him. "Deku's just as cool as me now," he proclaimed triumphantly. And Izuku had tears in his eyes, because even back then, he knew that would never be possible. They both planned to go to UA. Kaken wouldn't settle for anything less than the best hero school in the country, and Izuku was such a die-hard All Might fanboy that he was dying to go to All Might's alma mater. They trained so hard for the entrance exam, spending long nights in the gym in between doing homework and learning everything they could about being a hero. Izuku spent many anxious nights worrying about whether he would be able to get in. His quirk wasn't suitable for fighting at all. How was he supposed to pass the exam? He was basically quirkless unless somebody died. And his quirk itself was so weird. How was he supposed to practice it? Was he supposed to make the school kill animals over and over again just so that he could revive them? And how the heck was he supposed to practice on people without someone getting murdered over and over again? Would they even want someone like him at UA? The nature of his quirk means that he's seen more dead things than most other people. Would they think he was too traumatized to become a hero? Kaken was always there when he spiraled. He would give Izuku this fond look every time, as if to say, "Really, idiot? You're still worried about this?" It did funny things to Izuku's heart, even back then. Kaken was the strongest, smartest, most amazing person he knew. And yet, somehow he chose to hang around the kid who brings dead things back to life, when most other people wouldn't. Most of the other kids at school tended to avoid him. His quirk was unconventional, and that put some people off. But somehow, Kaken stayed, even when he became one of the most popular kids at their school. He chose Izuku, and he kept choosing Izuku every time. He was always the one to tell him he was being stupid, that his quirk was going to make him the best rescue hero in the world someday and he shouldn't let the extras bring him down, and Izuku felt something pleasant course through his veins every single time. So when Kaken hugged him the day of the exam, telling him that you worked your butt off for this. Just 'cause you don't have a fighting quirk doesn't mean you're not gonna get in. Shut the F up and ace this. Izuku couldn't help but smile as a burst of confidence surged through him. He knew that Kaken was just as nervous as he was, but that didn't stop him from trying to be nice, even so. Of course, he never stopped believing in Kaken, not once in their whole lives, but knowing that Kaken believed in him right back always made him feel warm all over. Izuku walked into the entrance exam feeling much less nervous, like he actually had a chance despite his unconventional quirk. Like that dream was still attainable. He was smiling the whole time. Not because it's what All Might would do, but because it's what Kaken wanted him to do. Izuku nearly had a heart attack when they both got accepted. He stared at the letter with shaky hands, feeling the tears gathering in his eyes before he could stop them. And afterwards, when Kaken reached for his hand with an impossibly shy look on his face, something warm and new and exciting and terrifying bloomed inside his chest. It felt like maybe Kaken was thinking the same wistful thoughts that Izuku was, like he might want the same thing Izuku did. Of course, Izuku didn't know exactly what that feeling was or how to do any of that sort of thing, but those emotions were pleasant and happy and had Kaken written all over them. So, he asked Kaken to go to their favorite smoothie place, stuttering and stammering and blushing like mad as he did. And when Kaken said yes, something inside him seemed to click right into place. Everything he was feeling suddenly felt so much less scary, knowing that Kaken felt it too. Kaken wasn't afraid of anything. Izuku spent ages preparing for whatever was going to happen. He did so much reading online, even making a notebook to organize his thoughts. He didn't know what to expect, really, but dealing with all of these unknowns with Kaken by his side didn't feel so bad. Then Chisaki happened, and everything changed in a single heartbeat. Izuku doesn't remember all of it. He remembers bits and pieces, some stark moments that he hasn't quite managed to block out from his memory. He remembers walking to the smoothie shop, before feeling a rag pressed over his face, smelling sickly sweet. He fought, he knows he did, trying to put some of that combat training to good use. But eventually, the chloroform did its job, and he passed out in someone's arms. He still doesn't know whose. He still doesn't know if Overhaul came to take him himself, or if he had one of his lackeys do it for him. He remembers waking up in what looked like a bunker, surrounded by men in plague doctor masks. He remembers the fear, the terror he felt. He remembers trying to fight before he noticed the 4 in his arm and passed out from whatever the heck they gave him to keep him weak. He remembers trying to run, every chance he got. Every time he saw an opening, no matter how weak he was from sedation or blood loss from all the tests they ran on him, or pain from one of Chisaki's goons getting rough when he wouldn't behave, he tried to run. He knew there would be hell to pay if he failed, and now he has the scars all over his body to prove it, but he tried anyway. He had to get out of here. He couldn't just stay here and die. That's not what a hero does. That's not what All Might would have done. That's not what Kaken would have done. Kaken. He remembers missing Kaken a lot. He cried so much for his mom and his UA offer and his dreams of being a hero, but for Kaken most of all. He cried in his massive prison cell of a room, mumbling that he was sorry over and over and over again. Sorry for leaving the way he did, for hurting him and abandoning him without a goodbye, even though it wasn't really his fault. Sorry for missing their date and never getting to figure out what the hell they were to each other. He missed Kaken so much that it was causing him physical pain, and he told him that too, even though he couldn't hear it. He wondered what Kaken was doing, if Kaken went to UA without him and became a hero just like he wanted to. He would hate himself if Kaken gave up on his dream because of him. He stared at the bracelet on his wrist, the matching ones he made for himself and Kaken when they were 6, hoping that his disappearance didn't hurt Kaken too badly. Sometimes he thought about the good times, all the things that they did together and all the happy memories they made. And sometimes he felt so unbelievably guilty, because Kaken must think that he's dead by now, and Izuku never, ever wanted to cause Kaken pain. Eventually, his attempts at escape grew fewer and fewer. All of Chisaki's poking and prodding and experimenting got easier to endure after more and more time passed. It got easier to block it all out and take the pain. At first, he tried to be smarter about this, biding his time and waiting for a golden opportunity to run instead of trying to escape every chance he got. That usually ended with a broken arm or something worse. Sometimes, Chisaki himself would get angry, and on those days, Izuku swore he would never try to run again. So at first, he watched, silently observing until he found some crucial piece of information that would give him the upper hand. It always worked in the movies, didn't it? He could practically hear Kaken's voice egging him on, urging him not to be an idiot and figure this out with that big brain of his. Kaken was always good at being encouraging, even when he didn't want to admit it. Some days, thinking about Kaken was all that kept Izuku going. He learned that Overhaul's group is with the Yakuza, that they call themselves the Shai Hasaikai. He learned that they were experimenting with quirks, trying to synthesize new drags based on unique quirks that would cripple the heroes on the battlefield. He tried to memorize some of it, but a lot of the information got lost with all the sedatives that Chisaki pumped into his system. Izuku guessed that Chisaki was trying to create a resurrection drag based on his quirk. It'd make sense to give the villains an endless supply of resurrections, in case they met a bad end. But he also used Izuku to bring back his own operatives that got into trouble, uncaring of how much weaker Izuku was now or how much energy it took to resurrect 3 or 4 people within a couple of days. Sometimes he slept for days after incidents like that, and he didn't know if Overhaul much cared to see if he was still alive. The days that Overhaul forgot about him entirely were the best days. Those were the days that he could try and do some basic exercises to keep his strength up, or try and plan another escape attempt. Those were days that he dared to hope that somehow, some way, someone would come and get him out of here if he couldn't manage to do it himself. All Might or Endeavor or Hawks or Kaken. Somehow, he desperately hoped that Kaken would find him someday. Or that he would find his way back home and get to see the look on Kaken's face when he surprised him. Months passed. Izuku still isn't sure how many, even now. He thinks it's been a little over a year, but it's really easy to lose track of time when you spend all day and all night in the same underground room. Days started to blur together, and to this day, there are still PRDs that he's blocked from his memory entirely. But he tried to stay strong, to keep going just like All Might and Kaken would. He stopped trying to run when they told him about Eri. He met her a few times. She's so sweet, no older than 6 and so shy, the few times Overhaul let them talk. They thought he could talk some sense into her, make her behave herself. Izuku hates those words so much even now. He tried to make her smile. He didn't succeed, but he thought he could see a small flicker of hope in her eyes when she saw she wasn't suffering alone. Izuku promised he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. Whatever he could do, he would. So when they told him that they would kill her if he tried to run again, kill them both if he tried to take her with him, the choice to stay was easy. Risking his own life was nothing. Risking hers was unthinkable. It tore him apart to think about what they were doing to her, but Chisaki kept them separated all the time, so it was impossible to try and help. He hated that he couldn't do anything for her except silently try to send her strength, try to wait until the opportunity presented itself again to get them both out of here. The thought of sitting here being useless while she was suffering almost squashed whatever hope he had left. It made him feel like, even if he somehow managed to make it back to his old life, he didn't deserve to be a hero after all. Today, Izuku wakes up slowly, his arms still sore from the most recent round of Chisaki's experiments, and his mind hazy as the residual effects of the sedatives make him groggy. The past few days have been some of the worst he's had in a while. 3 days ago, he had to revive 2 of Overhaul's goons who were shot in the field, and it left him so wiped that he was barely conscious when they started to take a scalpel to his already scarred arm. They needed a few more tissue samples, Chisaki's scientist said, with a sadistic smile on his face. So today he's wiped out, but it seems as if he has a short reprieve. Even as woozy as he is, he should really try to at least get a little bit of exercise in. All the muscle he built up before he was taken and brought here has withered away by now, and he wonders if it'll ever come back. But it doesn't stop his stupid, stubborn brain from trying, clinging to some shred of hope that he might manage to get free someday. He's able to do a few sets of 10 push-ups and one set of crunches before his body gives up. Damn it. It's all right, but it's certainly nothing compared to what he could do before. Back when Kakin was training with him, egging him on and goading him with a constant challenge to be better than him. Izuku really misses that. He passes the time by reading for a little while. They at least gave him some things to keep him busy since he's been here, and he tries to read as much as he can in between all the unpleasantness. It feels important to keep his mind sharp, even if his body doesn't always cooperate with him. After a while, he starts to hear muffled noises coming from the upper levels of the compound. It sounds like nothing at first. Probably just Chisaki throwing a tantrum again, he thinks, rolling his eyes. But eventually, those sounds begin to get louder and louder, crashes and booms and rumbles in the ceiling that feel as if the whole bunker is moving somehow. Izuku's brow furrows, his heartbeat picking up. He's never heard those sounds before. What's going on? Somewhere in the back of his mind, his thoughts are racing, thinking about possibilities that he hasn't thought of in ages. Because what if? He bites down hard on that train of thought, cutting it off before it even gets onto the rails. It's dangerous to hope for rescue, even as badly as he wants to. But after more time passes, it gets harder and harder to deny that something is really wrong. The noises don't stop. In fact, they're only getting louder, and Izuku feels the adrenaline course through his body in a way it hasn't for months. Maybe it is possible? He gets up off the bed, moving towards the door and trying the handle. It's locked, as expected, but what Izuku doesn't expect is for the door to his cell? Fault? He doesn't know. But regardless, he doesn't expect the door to open, revealing a nameless man in the Hasaikai's usual plague doctor mask who steps inside. Izuku backs up in a hurry, arms up as if to signal that he doesn't want trouble. The man nods at the bed, and Izuku turns around, chewing on his bottom lip. Chisaki sent someone to watch him, then that might mean something's happening. Something's wrong. That's the only explanation, isn't it? They sent someone to watch me because they're vulnerable, and they're worried about me trying something. His thoughts are racing, trying to remember fight training long buried and tactical plans for rescue and disaster scenarios that he went over with Kakin when they were prepping for Yue. But what about Eri? How is he supposed to get past this villain, get to Eri, who's probably with Chisaki, and get them both out of here in one piece? How is he? Izuku sits back down on the bed, his hands effing into the sheets as he worries his bottom lip between his teeth. Can he even be sure this is all real? That it's not some drag-induced dream? That it's not a quirk, something that one of Overhaul's henchmen zapped him with as some sort of morbid test? Izuku sighs, feeling the fight drain out of him in one breath. That has to be it. This is all just a dream, some sort of cruel joke that his mind is playing on him. He's been here too long. He's really starting to lose it, isn't he? There's no way Chisaki would have let this happen. He's too strong and too smart for anyone to get the drop on him. But a few minutes later, he jolts. As he hears those same sounds getting even louder, to the point that they sound as if they're just outside. There are voices getting closer and closer, muffled by the concrete walls, but it almost sounds like, no way. He has to be imagining that voice. He has to be imagining this feeling flooding his chest, some sort of phantom energy that feels as if it's connecting him with someone else like invisible strings of fate. It's something he hasn't felt since before the Hasaikai captured him, and it could only mean, could those loud booms, that muffled angry voice outside the door, could this mean that Kakin is here? Kakin can't be here. If Kakin is here, then that means, if the Hasaikai captured Kakin too. He can't think straight. There's too much happening, too much for his still slightly hazy brain to comprehend right now, but he's hoping like he hasn't dared to hope in a very long time. He's picturing Kakin's face, his smile and his fierce, confident expression when he's really concentrating hard, and the door bursts open, and a lone figure steps into the room. Izuku's eyes widen, his jaw dropping and his hands trembling as he clutches the sheets. His heart suddenly races as he stares at the person standing in the doorway, and once again he catches himself wondering whether this is all an elaborate trap. He would recognize those ruby red eyes even if the rest of the world had suddenly lost all its color. Kakin. Izuku can't find his voice, can't make himself say anything as he stares at him. He's wearing a costume, one that Izuku recognizes from their many brainstorming sessions before they started UA. He feels his stomach flip when he realizes that Kaken had adapted some of his suggestions and design inputs, even adding little flecks of green here and there to embellish the design. The mask makes his eyes shine even brighter than they normally do, and the clips behind his ears make his hair look even more spiky than it normally does. The gauntlets bracketing his wrists were one of Izuku's suggestions too. He helped Kaken come up with a prototype design. He's so unbelievably, breathtakingly beautiful, but still Izuku can't bring himself to speak. He just stares, his eyes scanning Kaken's body as if Kaken's presence alone is enough to grant him strength. From the look on Kaken's face, it appears that he's doing the same thing, and Izuku wonders whether this might be real after all. Does he even dare to hope for that? There's blood dripping from a cut on Kaken's leg, and another on his forearm, and even though there's a bruise marring his face, he's still the most perfect thing Izuku has ever seen in his life. Izuku's entire body trembles when Kaken speaks, when he chokes out a tiny, awestruck Deku and utters that stupid nickname that Izuku hasn't heard in much too long. And when he smiles, so full of pure relief and joy and disbelief that it would be impossible for Izuku's imagination to fake it, Izuku banishes the doubts from his brain. Even if this does turn out to be a dream, even if Chisaki is testing him and there will be hell to pay later, this is the best he's felt since the day he was abducted. He opens his mouth, trying to think of something, anything to say. He spent so long thinking about this moment, dreaming about all the things he would tell Kaken if he ever got the chance, but now that the moment is here, his voice fails him. He wants to say so much, that he's sorry and he missed him and he never meant to leave like that and he never wanted to hurt him. But all the words are jumbled together, all the thoughts bleeding into one string of Kaken, 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 that Izuku can't untangle. But a moment later, his gut tenses as he notices the villain step out from where he bled into the shadows on the side of the room. He was so distracted by Kaken that he forgot that the Hasaikai's man was still in here with them. Watch out! Izuku yells before he has time to think about it. Kaken can't see the villain, who's rushing right towards him. Either he just doesn't notice or he's too busy staring at Izuku with his mouth hanging open to really care. At the sound of Izuku's voice, he starts, eyes snapping back into focus, but he can't react quickly enough, and Izuku can only let out a loud, painful scream as he watches the villain stand in front of him and bury a knife in Kaken's chest. Please no. Kaken coughs wetly, trying to fire off an explosion as the villain pulls the knife from his body. His wide, fearful eyes meet Izuku's, and Midoriya feels something inside him crack, splintering apart painfully as he watches Kaken's blood spread across the front of his costume. Kaken falls to his knees first, then his back, as Izuku sprints forward to crouch down next to him. He tries to say something, anything, wondering again whether this is some new form of torture. Some quirk that activates painful memories or fears to torture their enemies with thoughts of their loved ones dying right in front of them. Could he use his quirk to bring Kaken back? Is he strong enough for that today? And even if he does manage to do it, as weak as he is, how the hell is he supposed to ever recover from watching Kaken die right before his eyes? This has to be a dream. A nightmare. This can't be real, this can't be real, Kaken can't be dying, this can't be. Izuku's breath hitches as he catches sight of something on Kaken's wrist, catching the light at just the right angle to be visible through the gauntlet. It's a familiar pattern, woven from string with all the clumsiness of a 6-year-old hand that forms a perfect match to the one on Izuku's wrist. The bracelet. Their bracelet. Kaken is wearing their bracelet, and there's no way that his imagination or some quirk could mimic that detail. Izuku chokes on a sob, running over to Kaken and sliding forward onto his knees. He can see red coating the front of Kaken's costume, and he's already lifting his hands, ready to bring him back the moment he dies and uncaring of how much it'll weaken him. Kaken's eyes are fluttering, his hand outstretched as if to reach for something. Izuku maybe? Midoriya doesn't know, but he lets out another sob as the tears in his eyes begin to fall. He's gotten so used to seeing dead bodies over the past year or so, but it never gets easier, no matter how many times you see holes punched through people with bullets or knives. And this is Kaken. Izuku's first friend, his oldest friend, his possible boyfriend that never was, and the person that means more to him than anything else in the world. He never wanted to see Kaken in pain, and now he's effing dying because he came to save him against impossible odds. Izuku sees Kaken's eyes slide shut, but before he can rest his hands on his chest and use his quirk to bring him back, he feels a rough hand in his hair, pulling hard and dragging him away from Kaken's prone body. The villain drags him by the hair across the room, pulling roughly and forcefully and so hard that it hurts, but that's not what Izuku cares about. He struggles, kicking his legs and flailing his arms and trying to get away from the villain's hold and back to Kaken. He only has 7 minutes, until Kaken is gone for good and there's no way to bring him back. "Kaken," he whispers as he struggles to get away, as the villain drags him back towards the center of the room intending to make him stay. But he can't just sit here, he can't let them win. He can't let Kaken die like this. The tears are flowing faster now, spilling out before he can stop them as he watches Kaken struggle to hold onto consciousness. His body reacts on pure instinct, moving one elbow back forcefully and feeling pain course through his scarred arm as it connects with the villain's stomach. The man cries out, doubling over and briefly letting go of Izuku's hair long enough for him to scramble away. "Kaken!" He yells, much louder this time, running towards where Kaken is still lying on the ground, blood pooling around him. He's still breathing, it's shallow and weak but there nonetheless, which means the clock hasn't started yet. Izuku can't help the frustrated groan that leaves him. There's no way for him to heal Kaken until he actually dies, but watching him bleed out like this and being powerless to stop it is making him ache in ways that, even on his most painful days in this hellhole, he never has before. Across the room, he can see the villain getting up, stalking towards him with a murderous look in his eye. He knows he won't stop until Izuku makes him stop, so even though it feels like dragging his entire body across sharp rocks to leave Kaken alone, he stands up, turning back towards the villain with a matching scowl. It's a look that Kaken would be proud of, if he could see it, betraying a sense of rage that Izuku has never felt before. Not once in his whole life. It's comforting in a way. There were days where he wondered whether they really did manage to beat him into SBMison, whether Chisaki and his Yakuza lackeys managed to take away all of that passion and drive that he always had in abundance after all. He used to wonder what Kaken would think, if he saw how meek and subservient he had to become in order to survive. But now, as all that passion and fire and instinct come rushing back, Izuku feels himself relax slightly even with how awful everything is. It's nice to know that he's still himself at the end of the day. He really thought being here had changed him, broken him beyond repair. And there's so much rage, too, rage at Chisaki for starting this whole thing and blind, unadulterated fury at the man who hurt Kaken right in front of him while he was powerless to stop it. Izuku smiles, but it's not his usual smile. It's Kaken's smile, wild and feral and triumphant and angry and passionate even with the tears trailing down his face like tiny waterfalls. His hands clench into fists as he stares at the villain with that wild look on his face, mentally running through all of his old combat techniques that have been dormant inside his head until now. He's never felt like this before, but suddenly he wants to hurt this man, wants to kick the shit out of him on Kaken's behalf before they both get the hell out of here forever. He's channeling all of Kaken's fire that he's always admired and loved so much, using it to fuel his own inferno even higher as he thinks about how to get them both out of this alive. Izuku recognizes this guy, now that he thinks about it. He's quirkless. Izuku only knows that because they used to toss it back in his face all the time. They used to tell Izuku that he wasn't worth wasting their stronger operatives on, that he was too weak to be a real threat. But they haven't seen Izuku and Kaken together before. They have no idea the lengths he would go to on Kaken's behalf. In the back of his head, he's still scared. Scared that he won't be able to bring Kaken back, and scared that they won't be able to make it out of here with the two of them in one piece, and scared that he won't be able to get to Eri in the process. Part of him is still trying to process all this. Everything's moving so fast that he's running on adrenaline and little else. He keeps getting caught on the disbelief, on the "is this really happening?" of it all. But the practical part of him bottles up those thoughts as the rage takes over. One problem at a time, he thinks, as he stalks forward with that murderous look on his face. Take this guy out, save Kaken, then worry about the rest. Yeah, he thinks, as his hands clench into fists. He can work with that. Izuku steps forward, momentarily thanking the universe for giving him the foresight to put his sneakers on before all of this went down. This would be so much harder to do barefoot. He can't see the villain's expression underneath the plague doctor mask, but he can infer enough from his eyes. It's the same look that Izuku's seen almost every day since he's been here, the one that says you're worthless, and you're only alive because we let you live, and sit down and be a good boy or there will be hell to pay. He's sick of that look. He forces himself not to look back at where Kaken is still lying on the ground, taking slow, purposeful steps forward instead. He only has a few minutes before Kaken is gone forever, and he blinks away the tears, turning his vision blurry. He hasn't known this level of fury and sadness since he was first brought here. He almost forgot what it felt like, and the memory is oddly relaxing even as he gears up for a fight. The villain doesn't seem overly concerned. He seems relaxed, not worried at all in the face of Izuku's anger. And that only makes him madder, makes him even more fired up than he already was. He can see the mirth in the man's eyes, like he doesn't think Izuku is even worth it. Like he doesn't even care that he just killed Izuku's best friend in the whole world, right in front of him. That look doesn't change as Izuku's steps get faster, building up until he's sprinting towards the villain, letting out an angry yell as he rushes him. In that moment, he doesn't have a plan, doesn't have a fully formed thought in his head. He's all anger and despair and a little bit fear, and he rushes in with nothing but intensity and protective instinct to back him up. So really, it's not surprising when he feels the fist connect with his face, sending him reeling backwards and crying out in pain. The man is quirkless, but it still hurts, and Izuku blinks back the tears that are rising for a whole new reason. He can taste blood in his mouth, and before he can recover enough to counterattack, he feels that same fist land a second punch to his stomach. He wheezes, vision going temporarily white as he falls to his knees on the ground. He tries not to think about the squelching sound he hears. He's close enough to Kaken that one of his sneakers skids across the blood pooling on the floor. But he can't think about that now. He's mentally trying to keep track of time in his head, counting down the minutes he has left and trying to get his breath back. He can hear the villain laughing as he sits there, doubled over and trying to catch his breath. "Oh, come on," the man drawls, in between peals of laughter. "You're not seriously trying to fight me, are you? You'll never win. You'll die, just like your little friend." Izuku's brow furrows, and even as he pants he sees red again. The villain is distracted, for the moment, wrapped up in his own gloating and not paying much attention to Izuku. He glances over at Kaken's body, lying right where he left him. He can't see his chest moving anymore, and it cuts like a knife to the heart. He has no idea when Kaken died. He doesn't know how much time has passed. He has to bring him back now, before he can't anymore. Without thinking, he reaches for one of the small grenades hanging from Kaken's belt, taking advantage of the villain's divided attention. He's not 100% sure what they are or how powerful they are, but he has his suspicions, and even if all it does is distract the villain for long enough that Izuku can get the drop on him, that'll be enough. He needs it to be enough. Kaken needs it to be enough. He stays hunched over, still catching his breath, but also waiting, letting the villain think he's down for the count. He lets a few tears fall for good measure. He's used to this, playing up the helpless, meek little kid act so that his captors would leave him alone for a little while. But now it's about to bite them all in the butt, as he grips the grenade tightly in one hand and lets the villain approach him. Honestly, Blondie looked like he was gonna pack more of a punch, the villain muses, casually stepping closer. Izuku's breath hitches. "Shut up," he thinks, screwing his eyes shut to keep himself from yelling out the words. You don't know a DMN thing about him. Closer and closer the villain steps, until Izuku can see his feet directly in front of him. His brain is still calculating, trying to come up with a plan or strategy or something, while his body is trying to take advantage of the reprieve and heart is trying not to think about how much time Kaken has left. The villain laughs again, and the sound of it reminds Izuku of nails on a chalkboard. Kid looked tough, but he went down so easy. Didn't even move. It was so simple to get the jump on him, he was just standing there. The man lets out another laugh, and it sounds like nails on a chalkboard to Izuku. What a waste. Just another little weakling, I guess. And damn it, Izuku doesn't care about a plan anymore. He has to end this, get to Kaken and get the hell out of here. And this guy's standing here insulting Kaken when he has no FNG right. Izuku snaps, screaming in anger as he twists his body. He moves so fast that he surprises even himself, and the villain has no time to react. His right leg juts out to kick the villain's legs out from under him as he swivels, spinning so fast that his head throbs from the movement. The man goes down hard, landing on his back and dropping the knife that Izuku didn't even know he was holding. The one that's still covered in Kaken's blood. Izuku doesn't waste a moment, stumbling as he stands up before kicking the villain hard in the ribs. He yells as he does it twice more wordless sounds of fury and pain and 1.5 years of pent-up emotion that he finally gets a chance to unleash. "Shut the F up," he yells, his voice getting louder as he stands over the villain's prone body. He kicks the knife away for good measure, kicking the man's forearm when he tries to make a grab for it. "You don't know anything," Izuku seethes, tears pouring down his face. "You kept me here for over 1 year. Away from everyone. My friends, my life, everything. You know nothing about me or Kaken. He's so strong, so effing strong that you can't even, and you effing murdered him." He doesn't know why he's spilling all of this out. The villain doesn't care. None of them do. But the words come anyway, almost involuntarily, like he needs someone to hear them even if he's not even consciously aware of it. He keeps kicking, sloppy and erratic, as he lobs the grenade hard at the floor next to the man's head. He barely flinches at the loud bang that follows. It's not a big enough explosion to kill, but Izuku still smiles when the smoke clears, when he sees the man's eyes slide shut and he stops moving, slipping into unconsciousness. These emotions scare him. This desire to hurt, to maim, to cause pain in ways he's never ever wanted to, he's never felt these things before. They flare up violently, churning in the pit of his stomach and rising to the tips of his ears. They're almost blinding in their intensity, tunneling his vision and speeding up his breathing until all he can think about is everything he pushed down until it spilled out in a turbulent crescendo right at this moment. All the rage at Overhaul, at the Hasaikai and the universe, and even the heroes for leaving him here for so long. It's all boiling over in one violent tidal wave of emotion, in one blazing fire that scares the hell out of him as he glances down at the villain's body. His face is bruised, and he probably has more than a few broken ribs from the way Izuku kicked him. Part of him is horrified. He's never actually fought another person before. Sparring with Kaken was one thing. But a real fight? One where he actually has to hurt someone? He's never done that before. But the other part, the part that's stretching itself like a stiff limb suddenly being used for the first time, is actually happy as he stares down at the villain's prone body. That part is feeling a cold, vindictive pleasure at the sight, as a satisfied smirk spreads across his face. He wants someone to pay for what they did, to him and Kaken and Eri, anyone else the Hasaikai has hurt over the years. And that feeling terrifies him. Logically, he knows that people act differently when fight or flight kicks in, but part of him still hates himself for it. He spent so long just trying to survive, but now? Is this who he is now? Someone who wants to hurt people instead of save them? Someone who just wants revenge? It's not I had to. He's still breathing, but he would have killed me. I'm not like them. He stares down at his hands, watches the way they tremble. And then his breath hitches as he whirls around, sprinting towards Kaken's body and dropping to his knees. He was so wrapped up in his thoughts, his fears, that he has no idea how much time has passed. How much time Kaken has left. How could he be so stupid? How could he just leave Kaken here like this? All the rage and turmoil he was feeling drains from him in an instant, replaced with cold, bitter fear. Suddenly he hates himself even more, knowing that while he was struggling with his own thoughts, Kaken's been dead. Kaken, he chokes out, pressing the back of his hand against his mouth as he chokes on a sob. "I'm so sorry, Kaken. I'm so sorry," he whispers. He can't stop the tears as he lifts his trembling hands, placing them on Kaken's chest and flinching violently when they grow sticky with blood. He can feel his head pounding, feel the tension in his aching muscles and the shaking in his weary limbs. He knows he's already weak. He knows he might be risking too much, using too much energy if he brings Kakin back. But he doesn't care. He needs Kakin to be okay. If he somehow makes it out of here and Kakin isn't there to see it, then he might as well die with him. Izuku closes his eyes, breaths hitching with his sobs as he summons all his strength. He feels the warmth spreading from his hands into Kakin's body, his own limbs trembling even more violently as it does. Please, Kakin, Izuku chokes out, hoping desperately that he isn't too late. Please wake up. You have to wake up. Crying so much probably isn't helping his case here. He needs all the strength he can muster. He keeps pouring energy into his quirk, feeling the pull in the pit of his stomach that always appears when he uses it. I need you, Kakin, he whispers, choking on another sob as he stares down at Kakin's pale face and blood-soaked chest. We have to get out of here together, right? I can't do this without you. He screws his eyes shut, pouring all the energy he can into his quirk. Stab wounds aren't usually so hard to bring someone back from, but this one went deep, probably nicking a lung on the way to Kakin's heart. He stays there for a few more moments, desperately hoping that this will work as he feels the energy draining from his hands. When he uses his quirk, it always stops on its own, like his body just naturally knows when the process is complete. He takes a deep breath, before wiping his bloody hands on the front of his shorts and slowly, hesitantly opening his eyes. The wound on Kakin's chest has closed, the skin whole and unbroken like it was never there in the first place. But he's still not moving, his eyes shut and his chest still. Devoid of breath. Wake up, Kakin, Izuku whispers, the shock turning his voice high-pitched and breathy as it breaks on his name. Please, you gotta wake up. He has to, he can't be gone, he can't be. Not when Izuku just got him back, not when they have so much to catch up on and so much lost time to make up for. Wake up, Kakin, please. Please. His sobs are growing violent now, and he can't stop the tears any more than he could stop the sun from setting. Kakin. A loud noise from the hallway startles him, has his head snapping up from where he's staring at Kakin's body. Before he can react, two figures enter the room, looking like they're ready for a fight. Izuku doesn't recognize these two, but his breath hitches at the thought of fighting more of the Hasaikai's goons. They're not wearing the usual plague doctor mask, but Izuku wouldn't be surprised if Chisaki had brought in some extra muscle now that his organization is vulnerable. One has spiky red hair, wearing a dark red costume, sans shirt. The other's hair is half red and half white, and he has a large scar covering one eye. These two are a lot younger than Chisaki's normal people. In fact, they almost look like they're the same age as himself and Kakin. Izuku stares at them with wide eyes, not bothering to wipe away the tears or move away from Kakin's body. But when the redhead takes in their surroundings, crying out as he moves towards Kakin, Izuku sees red again. He doesn't care how weak he is, or how badly he might get hurt. Whoever these people are, they are not touching Kakin. Even if he's already. Get away from him, Izuku says, his voice quiet and laced with venom, even as it hiccups and stutters and breaks on the last word as his chest heaves. He braces his fists in front of him, trying his best to look threatening even though he's still sobbing. You're not touching him. The redhead frowns, looking like he wants to say something, but the one with the multicolored hair stops him with a hand on his arm. He glances at the other, nodding once before stepping forwards and raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. Midoriya? Izuku Midoriya? Izuku freezes, his eyes widening. Chisaki's people never call him by name. Not ever. Some dehumanization tactic that Izuku used to read about, skeptical of how well it worked until he experienced it firsthand. How do you? His eyes widen, his knees shaking as the exhaustion starts to take over. How do these two know my name? He was never even sure that Chisaki knew his name. He never used it. Who? Something flickers across the redhead's face, some sort of understanding that Izuku can't place. He shares a look with his friend? Partner? Izuku doesn't know. But after glancing his way, the shirtless one makes the same gesture of surrender. Hey Midoriya, he says, smiling brightly. It's a stark contrast to everything else about this scene, and it throws Izuku off enough that he lowers his fists slightly. But a moment later, he shakes his head, raising them again as the redhead takes a step closer. My name is Kirishima. Ijiro Kirishima. This is my friend. Shoto Todoroki, the other supplies, his lip quirking upwards in a tiny smile. Izuku swallows, refusing to let his guard down even for a moment, but something nagging at the back of his mind tells him that this might not be what he thinks it is. How? He clears his throat, trying to take deep breaths. His voice is hoarse from the screaming and the crying. How do you know my name? The redhead Kirishima smiles again, a little bigger this time. He has a nice smile. Izuku can't help but notice. It's almost like it's a hero's smile, soft and disarming and meant to put frantic civilians at ease. Izuku supposes that's what he is now. We're Bakugo's friends, Kirishima says, eyes flicking towards where Kaken lies on the ground. We came with him to get you out of here. We're not going to hurt you, Midoriya. Either of you, Todoroki chimes in. But this isn't right. They're heroes? They're Kaken's friends? His arms lower fractionally again as he tries to take in this new information. But when Todoroki steps forward, Izuku's brow furrows again. Don't come any closer. He needs a minute. Damn it, he needs to process this because Kaken is D. Kirishima moves slowly, like he's trying not to startle a wounded animal. Hey, seriously. We came here for you. Katsuki told me all about you. That makes something odd settle in Izuku's stomach, but he doesn't have time to dwell on it right now. Not when these two boys are coming closer and closer. Kirishima points at Izuku's wrist with that smile still on his face. You made that same bracelet for Bakugo, right? When you two were 6. He never takes his off. He really missed you. Izuku swallows, feeling the tears welling up in his eyes again. Kaken missed him? He missed him and he came here to get him, and now he… I'm sorry, Izuku says in a broken whisper, feeling his resolve giving out as he falls forward onto his knees. He's really crying again, frantically wiping at his eyes with the backs of his bloody hands. I couldn't. Hey, whoa, Kirishima says, stepping forward and crouching down in front of him. Izuku notices the way his eyes shift towards Kaken, and the worried look there. What's wrong? Is Katsuki? It makes Izuku cry harder, and he shakes his head as the tears drip onto the ground in front of him. Kaken, I am so sorry. He knows he's not making sense, but everything's crashing into him all at once. All the pain and misery and soul-crushing guilt is slamming home now, because Kaken came to save him and now he's gone. He's gone, and it's all Izuku's fault. He wasn't FNG strong enough. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to… And suddenly, the most beautiful noise in the whole universe sounds from behind him. It's a loud, violent gasp, followed by a lot of coughing in between panting, heaving breaths for air. Izuku's whole body freezes, going rigid for a split second, before he spins around so fast he can feel his whole body protesting. But he doesn't care, he's oblivious to Kirishima and Todoroki's startled faces behind him. He doesn't bother to stop the tears, the sobs that are coming even harder for a completely different reason. His whole body slumps forward, unable to handle this second wave of emotion as he lets out a startled laugh made of nothing but pure relief. Because Katsuki Bakugo is sitting on the floor, brow furrowed in disgust as he takes in the blood around him, gasping for air and perfectly, wonderfully, blessedly alive. Kaken scoots forward, making a face as he sees the blood, oblivious to the way Izuku shuffles towards him, almost in a daze. He stares at Kaken's chest, rising and falling and devoid of any sign of a wound. He's seen delayed reactions to his quirk before. Sometimes it's like the body needs time to catch up with what happened, a minute to process before the person actually wakes up. But he forgot about it in the midst of all the pain, because he really thought Kaken was. Izuku keens, letting out a high-pitched whine that he's half surprised came from his own lips as he half collapses on top of Kaken's body, wrapping his arms around his waist and burying his face in the crook of Kaken's neck. He can feel the drying blood from the front of Kaken's costume seeping into his shirt a bit, and he can smell the tangy, copper scent of it. But underneath that is something warm and familiar, that smell of caramel and smoke and something unique to Kaken that he remembers from all those years ago. That smell means home. It means safety and heat and love and most every happy memory he's ever had, and suddenly he doesn't care about anything else except getting as close to that smell as possible. Kaken's body goes stiff when Izuku hugs him, as if he's still not quite sure where he is or what's happening around him. But a moment later he groans, quiet and high-pitched and full of so much emotion that it makes Izuku cry harder. And then warm, muscular arms are wrapping around Izuku's back. They're slightly hampered by the bulky gauntlets on Kaken's wrist, but they're nonetheless, and Izuku can feel gloved hands F&G in the thin material of his shirt. He can feel tiny puffs of air against his neck, along with the rise and fall of Kaken's breathing and the steady pounding of Kaken's heartbeat against his chest. It's acting like a balm to all of Izuku's wounds. None of it, not Chisaki or the villains or the possibility of escape, none of it matters as long as that brilliant fiery heart is still beating. Kak-chan, Izuku says, the words muffled by Kaken's shoulder and forced out between sobs. His own chest is heaving, heavy and aching with the strain, but he can't be bothered to even think about taking deep breaths right now. Kaken makes a noise, gripping Izuku even tighter, if that's possible. Deku! Izuku can't help it. He laughs. He laughs like it's the last laugh he'll ever get, because it's been so dim and long since he's heard that word. Kaken. They stay like that for who knows how long. But after some time, Izuku can feel the way Kaken shifts, twitching as if he's still in pain. His brow furrows like he's confused, like his memory is fuzzy and incomplete. He doesn't let go, but he turns his head, clearing his throat as his voice gets louder. This happened? What's going on?